Chapter 1360. A ray of light suddenly flashed in the dark, and there was the sound of wind. When he heard the sound of wind, the bald man suddenly felt a sharp pain in his arm, and the gun in his hand fell to the ground with a bang. There was a military knife on his right wrist, and the handle of the knife was stuck. The bald man's reaction was also very fast. He did not see who attacked him. The moment he was stabbed, he went behind the young man and used his injured arm to clamp the young man's neck. Then he used his left hand to pull out the military knife on his right wrist and stuck it to the young man's carotid artery. At this time, the bald man looked in the direction where the military knife came from. His eyes were filled with fear and anger. Charlotte slowly walked out of the darkness and said calmly, "I was just passing by. Why did you attack me?" The bald man did not speak. He stared at the man who appeared from the darkness. The man did not have 3 heads and 6 arms. He looked very ordinary, but he had a very special temperament and something that made the bald man feel afraid. Charlotte added, "Why did you attack me?" At this moment, the bald man wanted to die. If he had known that this guy was so scary and had a blue dragon as a helper, he would not have attacked the scary guy in front of him even if the gun was pressed against his head. "Why don't you say something? Can you be reasonable?" said Xiaolei. The bald man was speechless. Charlotte continued to walk toward the bald man. "Don't come over," the bald man suddenly shouted. "If you dare to take another step, I will kill him." Charlotte stopped. "Who is he? You're not here for him. Didn't I tell you just now? I was just passing by. If you did not attack me, I am afraid I would have left," Charlotte said. "Then leave now." Hearing what Charlotte said, the bald man wanted to bang his head against the wall even more. However, Charlotte shook his head. "You attacked me. How are you going to settle this? My people were almost all killed by you and that blue dragon. What else do you want? We are Blackbeard's men." The bald man shouted at Charlotte. "Who is Blackbeard? You actually don't know who Blackbeard is?" The bald brute was tormented. Charlotte said indifferently, "Should I know who he is? All right, perhaps what you said makes sense. Tell me who this young man is. Who is Blackbeard, and why did you capture him? Tell me everything I want to know, then I'll decide whether to leave or not." No one dares to meddle in Blackbeard's business. The bald man's expression was ferocious. "No matter who you are, you will definitely regret it." Charlotte frowned. "It seems that you don't want to cooperate with me." Bang, 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 a roar. Intense gunshots, the roar of the blue dragon, and the screams of despair came from the building next door. These voices brought great pressure to the bald man. His hands were shaking and his eyes were filled with bewilderment. "Hey, be careful," the young man suddenly said. "Don't cut me." "Shut up," the bald man said fiercely. Charlotte said, "Brother, why don't you tell me who you are?" The young man looked at Charlotte, but didn't say anything. Charlotte said, "I'm saving you. If you still want to keep any secrets from me, that's too rude. I'll leave now." He really turned around and left. "Wait." The young man stopped Charlotte. "Hani Fei, my name." Charlotte stopped again and turned to look at the young man who called himself Hani Fei. Hani Fei continued, "I am Professor Pompey's assistant. Blackbeard's men killed Professor Pompey and then captured me." Charlotte suddenly interrupted Hani Fei. "Wait, what did you just say?" Hani Fei said, "Blackbeard's men killed Professor Pompey and then captured me. They're going to take me to..." "Not this sentence, the last sentence." Charlotte was inexplicably excited. "You just mentioned AE. What's AE?" Hani Fei looked at Charlotte with a strange look. Charlotte's reaction made him curious, puzzled, and a little vigilant. "Tell me," Charlotte urged Han Fei anxiously. "Shut up," the bald man roared. "Do you think I don't exist?" Charlotte's eyes moved to the bald man's face. His eyes were very cold. The bald man was very emotional. "Didn't you just ask me who Blackbeard is? Let me tell you, Blackbeard is the new king of Area 51. Even lustful cats dare not provoke him. This guy is someone Blackbeard wants. You'd better get out of here, or you and your blue dragon will die." "You're too noisy," Charlotte said. He bent down and picked up a stone from the ground. "What did you say? Believe it or not, I'll kill him now." The bald man suddenly cut Han Fei's neck with his saber. Whoosh! The stone that Charlotte had just picked up flew out of his hand. With a whistling sound, it instantly hit the bald man's head. Bang! Blood splattered. The bald man let out a muffled groan and fell to the ground. His face was dyed red with blood, as well as his bald head. Hanifei was also shocked. He looked at Charlotte in a daze. He couldn't believe that Charlotte solved the problem with a stone. Just now, he was even worried that the bald man would cut his carotid artery. Charlotte walked to Hanifei and picked up his saber from the ground, but he didn't immediately cut the rope on Hanifei. He said, "Let's continue our conversation just now. You mentioned AE. What's AE? Why are you so interested in AE?" Hanifei's voice was filled with vigilance. Charlotte said, "I understand your vigilance against me, but I have to tell you that I'm not a bad person. I saved you, so just treat it as a way to repay my kindness. Tell me." Han Yifei hesitated for a moment before saying, "I can see that you're different from these people. All right, I can tell you. Anyway, if it wasn't for you, there wouldn't be AE in this world." After a pause, Han Yifei continued, "I'm from the Heavenly Jewel Academy. Do you know about the Heavenly Jewel Academy?" Charlotte shook his head. "I don't know. The Heavenly Jewel Academy is the last academy of mankind. We see it as a spark for the revival of human civilization. Every year, the Heavenly Jewel Academy selects children with high intelligence from various districts and brings them to the academy for training. I'm one of them. My hometown is in District 1. I've been in the Heavenly Jewel Academy for 15 years, and I've been learning every day. I'm most proficient in biology. One day, Professor Pompey found me and asked me to join a project he had set up. The project was called Artificial Evolution. Professor Pompey is a Caucasian who speaks Spanish. AE is the abbreviation for Artificial Evolution in Spanish." Charlotte was shocked. He had never thought that the secret that had troubled him for so many years on Earth would actually be found here. The origin of AE was actually here. "Can you take off your helmet?" Hanifei said, "I've already shown my sincerity. You should at least let me see your face, right?" Xiaolei came back to his senses and took off the helmet of his light armor. Seeing Charlotte's face, Han Yifei started slightly, then laughed and said, "Damn it, I'll definitely not bring you to see my junior." Charlotte was not in the mood to joke. After taking off the helmet, he took off all the light battle armor parts and pushed them in front of Han Yifei. "What are you doing?" Han Yifei asked curiously. Charlotte said, "I never knew that there was a place like the Heavenly Jewel Academy in this world. I also didn't know that there was a group of people like you who fight for the fate of mankind. You need it more than I do. Take it. I'm giving this light battle armor to you." "You." Han Yifei obviously knew the value of this light battle armor, but he did not expect Charlotte to give it to him so easily. Charlotte brought the topic back to the main topic. "What have you guys found out?" Han Yifei said, "There are some results, but it's not mature yet. Under Professor Pompey's lead, we found a way to advance human evolution. How can the Blue Moon people defeat us? In the Holy Thunder era, our technology was not much worse than the Blue Moon people's technology, and we had more people. However, we were still defeated by the Blue Moon people and were enslaved by them for thousands of years. The most fundamental reason for all of this was not how bad our technology was, but that the Blue Moon people's evolution was far beyond ours." Charlotte's heart was full of guesses. Professor Pompey found this problem, so he set up the AE team in the city to try to find a way to advance human evolution. 2 months ago, Professor Pompey suddenly gathered us together one day. He announced a piece of good news. He said he found a key to solving the problem. What did he find? Charlotte could not help but ask. Han Yifei smiled bitterly and shook his head. His face was full of pain. Professor Pompey didn't say anything. I understand him. People who engage in scientific research won't say anything that they haven't confirmed. He will announce the results, but that should be after he has done the experiment and obtained the evidence. But he, on that night, these guys rushed into our laboratory, killed Professor Pompey, and stole his information. The people in the AE team are either dead or have escaped. They no longer exist. Charlotte's gaze shifted to the bald man. His eyes were burning with anger. The reason I am still alive is because they still need someone to complete the unfinished experiment. I think so. Because I am Professor Pompey's assistant, I know some things, Hani Fei said. Where is the Heavenly Jewel Academy? Charlotte asked. Why do you ask? Charlotte said, I want to send you back. Chapter 1361. I will send you back. This was Charlotte's promise to Han Yifei, and it was not an impulsive decision. Hearing Han Yifei's story, he couldn't help but have the urge to protect this young scientist. Doing so would definitely cause a lot of trouble for his plan, but he felt it was worth it. Furthermore, he had a feeling that the Heavenly Jewel Academy would have the answer he wanted to find. Are you serious? Han Yifei looked at Charlotte with a strange look. This man in front of him, no matter what he said or did, he couldn't understand him. Charlotte said, Of course I am serious. I am not joking with you. Han Yifei was silent for a while before saying, I thank you for your kindness, but I cannot bring you to the Heavenly Jewel Academy. Why? Han Yifei said, I do not have the authority to bring anyone to the Heavenly Jewel Academy. That place is very important to the entire human race. If everyone could go there, it would have been destroyed long ago. To enter the Heavenly Jewel Academy, one needs to go through a very strict examination and also a sponsor and guarantor. Can't you be my sponsor and guarantor? Charlotte said. Han Yifei said, I do not have that qualification. If you really want to go to the Heavenly Jewel Academy, then at least you need the commander of the resistance, Kong Tu Nana, to be your guarantor. At least? Xiao Lei was rather surprised. In his eyes, the commander-in-chief of the resistance army was already a very important person, but the Heavenly Jewel Master Teacher's recommendation and guarantor was only at least. Could it be that in this new world, there was someone even more important than Kong Tu Nana? At least, Han Yifei said confidently. Charlotte smiled bitterly. In that case, forget it. But can you tell me where the Heavenly Jewel Academy is? I would like to go there in the future if I have a chance. Han Yifei said, Although you saved my life, I cannot tell you where the Heavenly Jewel Academy is. Charlotte frowned. You don't believe me? Han Yifei said, It's not that I don't believe you, but I do not have the qualifications. Also, you said you have the chance to go back to the Heavenly Jewel Academy in the future. That is not true. What do you mean? Tianju Institute changes its location every year. It's never a fixed location. Han Yifei said, Let me give you an example. Last year, I went to the Heavenly Jewel Master Academy, and I left. If I want to go to the Heavenly Jewel Academy again this year, it will definitely not be in the same place as before. I will need to send out an application, and someone will come to bring me there. Do you understand what I mean? Charlotte gave a bitter smile and nodded. Earlier, he had been thinking of keeping Han Yifei by his side, and when the Blue Moon energy field disappeared, he would steal the relevant memories from Han Yifei's mind. Alas, he had not expected that the Heavenly Jewel Master Academy did not have a fixed address. If that was the case, even if he managed to steal the relevant memories from Han Yifei's mind, he would not be able to find the Heavenly Jewel Master Academy. However, it's not like you don't have a chance. Han Yifei said, A person like you could be considered an outstanding combat talent in the human world. I will tell the people in the academy about your situation, and they will definitely send someone to check on you. Once they think you are safe, you will definitely have the chance to go to the Heavenly Jewel Master Academy, and perhaps even become their branded warrior. Branded warrior? Charlotte started. He was very sensitive to the word branded. Yes, branded warriors. Han Yifei said, They are the strongest warriors in the human world, and they protect the Heavenly Jewel Master Academy. Are they all very powerful? In what aspects? Charlotte asked tentatively. Han Yifei said, I'm not sure about that. The branded warriors of the Heavenly Bamboo Academy are very mysterious. I'm not a warrior, and I do not know what they are good at. Charlotte said, I understand. Thank you for telling me all this. If there is a chance, I will definitely go to the Heavenly Jewel Master Academy to meet the branded warriors. What I'm concerned about now is your plans. I cannot send you to the Heavenly Jewel Master Academy, but I'm also worried about letting you leave alone. These people did not hand you over to Blackbeard, and he will definitely send people to hunt you down. Without my protection, you will not be able to escape. Fei thought for a moment. How about this? You send me to the desolate border city. The resistance is there, and they should have the ability to protect me. Charlotte said, No problem. I will send you to the desolate border city. Anyway, I have to pass by there. The desolate border city is actually not your destination. Where are you going? Fei seemed to have guessed something and said with a surprised look. Charlotte smiled. I'm going to the dark forest, also known as the Forest of Rest. Ah, Fei stared at him in shock. Right at that moment, Rihua walked out from the darkness. Its eyes were as blue as bells, and its mouth was stained with blood. Its body gave off a powerful and dangerous aura, causing one to feel fear. Previously, when Charlotte had seen Rihua for the first time, he had been given a huge fright. At this moment, Rihua had suddenly appeared, and Fei's entire body seemed to be frozen in fear. His face was drained of blood, and his body started to tremble. Don't be afraid, it is my friend, Charlotte said. Fei did not seem to hear what Charlotte said. His mind was still blank, filled with fear. Charlotte picked up the military knife from the ground before cutting the ropes binding Fei's hands and legs. Put on the armor I gave you. My friend and I will wait for you outside. When you are ready, come out. We have to leave this place as soon as possible. Only then did Fei come to his senses, and he nodded. Charlotte reached out and grabbed one of the bald man's legs, dragging him out. Just now, he had only knocked the bald man unconscious, not killed him. However, that was only the difference between a little earlier and a little later. On the quiet and deserted street of the small town, the bald man was lying on the cracked concrete ground like a dead dog. His head was no longer bleeding, but his brain was still not functioning. A warm current suddenly poured on the bald man's head, waking him up. Cough, cough, cough. The bald man opened his mouth to breathe, but instead, he drank a mouthful of urine. He struggled to open his eyes, and then saw a young man who was zipping up his pants. This was the first time he saw Charlotte's face, and he had the urge to bite off that good-looking face. You are awake? Charlotte squatted beside the bald man and waved the military knife in his hand. To save time, I will not beat around the bush. Answer my questions, and you will live. If you do not answer, or lie to me, you will die. Did I make myself clear enough? The bald man glared at Charlotte and did not say a word. Charlotte suddenly stabbed the military knife in his hand into the bald man's thigh. Damn, this is also a question. Ah, the bald man screamed. You didn't say. Then I will ask you again. Did I make myself clear enough? Charlotte fiercely pulled out the military knife from the bald man's thigh, and a stream of blood suddenly spurted out. Clear. Hiss. Clear. My second question. Who is Blackbeard? The bald man's eyes flickered. Charlotte's voice was very cold. You better think carefully before you answer. I am doing this for your own good. If I stab you, you will not die. If I stab you 2 or 3 times, you will die from excessive blood loss. The bald man took a deep breath. Blackbeard is the most powerful person I have ever seen. His marksmanship is as good as yours, and his strength can kill a horned pig with 1 punch. We are like ants in front of him, and we do not dare to look at him directly. Are you King sure you are not lying to me? No. I am definitely not lying to you. The bald man hurriedly explained. What I said is true. He is very powerful. You will see him, and then you will know that I am not lying to you. What does he look like? He is very tall, more than 2 meters tall, and his arms are thicker than my thighs. He has a very long beard, black, so people call him Blackbeard. His favorite way to kill is not with a gun, but with a long-handled machete to cut people in half. This description surprised Xia Lei a little because in his eyes, the bold, brawny man in front of him was already strong enough. But he did not expect the black-bearded man's arm to be thicker than the bald, brawny man's thigh. How strong was Blackbeard? This was already very difficult to imagine. I have already told you, let me go. The bald man begged. Charlotte said, Why are you so anxious? Tell me, why does Blackbeard want to capture Fei? I don't know, I am just a small character. Blackbeard would not tell me such a thing. The bald man was very nervous, afraid that Charlotte would not be satisfied with this answer and stab him with a knife. Charlotte was not surprised by this answer at all. He also guessed that Blackbeard sent people to attack Professor Pompey and capture Han Yifei for the sake of Professor Pompey and Han Yifei's AE research. Where are you going to take him? After this town, about 500 miles is Blackbeard's lair. I'm following Blackbeard's orders to send Han Yifei there. The bald, brawny man said, You and your blue dragon must be going to Desolate Border City, right? That place is the only way. I advise you to let me go and leave, or you will die there. Charlotte stood up. You can go. Really? The bald, brawny man looked at Xia Lei with a look of surprise. Really? Charlotte said, looking very sincere. The bald man finally let out a long sigh of relief. He struggled to get up from the ground, but just as he was about to walk to where the car was parked, the blue dragon sunflower suddenly moved from the side and blocked his way. You said you would let me go. Quick, get out of the way, the bald man said with a trembling voice. Charlotte said indifferently, I promise to let you go. I have fulfilled my promise. As for it, you have to communicate with it. It is useless to tell me. You mother of asterisk roar. The blue dragon sunflower bit the bald brute into 2 pieces in one bite. Han Yifei walked out of the building and happened to see this scene. He couldn't hold it in for a moment. He leaned against the wall and vomited. Charlotte said, Are you going to drive or ride the blue dragon with me? Drive. Han Yifei leaned against the wall again. Why dash? Chapter 1362. The plains became narrower and narrower in their field of vision. There were mountains on both sides, and there was no end in sight. The brown mountain was barren, without any green vegetation. Gray smoke rose from the mountains and valleys, forming a thick haze that could not be blown away by the wind. The road continued to extend forward. At the end of their vision was a natural pass, and the road continued to extend through the pass. It was called the Desolate Border Road, and it extended all the way to Desolate Border City. The pass was called the White Bone Pass, and it was the only way to Desolate Border City. Sunflower, stop! Charlotte shouted at the sprinting sunflower, and, at the same time, he gave it a pause gesture. Rihua came to a halt and looked back at the rusty off-road vehicle behind her. Charlotte and Han Yifei were sitting in that car. In fact, Xia Lei could have ridden the sunflower instead of walking, but he would rather sit in a car. The reason was that the scales on the back of the sunflower were extremely hard, as if they were made of alloy. Sitting on it was simply killing his buttocks. However, the most important reason was that he took care of the dignity of a dragon. In this world, no one could ride a blue dragon as a mount. He was the only one. After Sunflower stopped, Han Yifei, who was driving the off-road vehicle, also stopped the vehicle. This was actually a modified off-road vehicle. There were dozens of metal spikes welded on the front bumper and the hood, and it was also made from the fragments of the Blue Moon People spaceship. If it charged at full speed, even a blue dragon would have to avoid it. The sides of the vehicle were also filled with sharp metal pieces, as sharp as knives. There were also skeletons, filthy graffiti, male genitalia, female genitalia. Sitting in this vehicle, feeling the roar of the engine and the dust that was kicked up, Charlotte felt that his adrenaline was much higher than usual. In the past, after the White Bone Pass, is the White Bone Canyon. Han Yifei pointed at a tattered map on the driver's seat and said, If that guy is right, Blackbeard's nest is in the canyon up ahead. D*MN. This is the only way we have to pass. Charlotte said, Is there no other way around? This place is very wide, and I don't believe that there aren't any secluded mountain paths that we could take a detour around. Han Yifei said, I understand what you mean, but I'm telling you that it won't work at all. Do you see the smoke on the mountain? They're poisonous, so people can't climb over those mountains at all. Roar! The blue dragon Rika roared at Charlotte. Charlotte said, Don't worry, let me think about it. Hina tilted her head. Han Yifei looked at Charlotte strangely. You can communicate with the blue dragon? Charlotte smiled. Do you think that's possible? It's just that I've been with it for a long time, so I can guess some of its thoughts. Sometimes it can also guess some of my thoughts. That's all. I knew it. The Heavenly Jewel Master Academy has been researching the blue dragons for a long time, but up till now, only one person has been able to decipher their language. Who? Hani Fei's mouth quirked up in a strange smile. She is the most beautiful and intelligent girl in our Heavenly Jewel Academy. Her name is Zhonggu Mu Hui, my junior, but she is much more outstanding than me. I know her, but she might not know me. Zhonggu Mu Hui, a very rare surname, right? Hani Fei said. When I first heard this name, I also thought it was very rare. Later, I found out that it was a surname that appeared after Shang Lei died. There's a story behind this surname, but I don't know what it is. If you meet her in the future, you can ask her. During the past 2 days, Charlotte and Hani Fei had taken turns driving. Along the way, he had heard many things about the Heavenly Jewel Master Academy from Hani Fei, and his curiosity towards that place grew stronger and stronger. Let's talk about it later. Now, drive the car to a remote place and hide. Charlotte opened the door and got out. Where are you going? Hani Fei asked. Charlotte looked up at the darkening sky, then turned his gaze to the White Bones Pass. I'm going to take a look. You and Rika stay outside and wait for me. Hani Fei instantly became nervous. I don't want to stay with a blue dragon. I'll go with you. It's better to have one more person to look out for. Charlotte said sternly. What can you do if you go? Stay here. Charlotte's ferocity stopped Han Fei's words. Charlotte walked to Rika's side, gesturing and gesturing at it. The two of them communicated for a full 10 minutes before it was over. After the exchange of body language, Hibana turned away from the road and soon disappeared into the dense grass. If you want to live, hide, Charlotte said to Han Fei, who was still sitting in the driver's seat. I know I can't convince you, but be careful. Han Fei also drove the car off the road and into the dense weeds to hide. Charlotte headed in the direction of the White Bones Pass alone. The eternal sun descended towards the western horizon, and the blue moon gradually appeared in the sky, emitting a cold blue light. The deserted road was silent. There was no wind, and the weeds along the road were withered and yellow, standing still. What kind of role does the Heavenly Jewel Academy play? Is it just a teaching and research institution, or something else? With the Blue Moon people's ability to seal off the entire world, it's impossible for them not to know about the existence of the Heavenly Jewel Academy. The Heavenly Jewel Academy is definitely a threat to the Blue Moon people, but why does the Heavenly Jewel Academy exist until now? Besides the strict security measures, is the branded warriors an important reason why the Heavenly Jewel Academy exists until now? Perhaps it was too boring to walk alone on the deserted road, but these questions kept popping up in Charlotte's mind. The Peace Village, the garbage dump, the Heartstone tribe, the wilderness, the bandits. These were all things that Charlotte had come into contact with until now. These things gave him the impression that they were chaotic and primitive, and he could not see any hope for humans. However, as he came into contact with more and more information, he realized that his understanding of this world was actually still extremely superficial. His understanding of this world was still insufficient, still lacking. There was still a long way to go, and the road back home was even longer. When would all of this come to an end? He did not know in his heart. Half an hour later, Charlotte approached the Pass of White Bones. The road was cut off by the damaged chariots and the debris of the Blue Moon people's spaceships. Blackbeard's bandits had used metal fragments and chariots to build something that looked like an ancient city tower at the pass. There were several bandits armed with live ammunition guarding the gate. There were also a few heavy machine guns, and their firepower covered an area of almost 180 degrees. Once discovered, there was no place to hide. There was a row of metal poles on both sides of the gate, and each metal pole was strung with white skulls. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew, and the skulls let out a whining sound, as if telling a tragic story in their language. Charlotte left the road and went into the dense weeds. However, after walking for a few dozen meters, the ground near the mountain pass became bare. Blackbeard bandits had swept away all the weeds around the pass, leaving no place for people to hide. Charlotte lay on the ground and crawled up the hill next to the pass with his elbows and knees. A bright searchlight beam shone over, illuminating everything in its path. Charlotte buried his face in his arms. The searchlight swept over Charlotte's back and shone along a fixed path. Electricity. This was the first time Charlotte had seen a beam of light converted from electricity since he came to this world. Blackbeard's gang actually had electricity, which surprised him a little. Charlotte continued to crawl up the hill. When a searchlight shone over, he lay on the ground without moving. After a simple camouflage, he was like a part of the earth, difficult to discover. 10 minutes later, Charlotte reached the bottom of the hill. Smoke came out a crack in the rock, and the smell was very pungent. Charlotte's head suddenly felt a little uncomfortable, but it was soon fine. Although his branding power was dormant, it was not non-existent. It was in his body, and it still had a passive protection for his body. In addition, he was immune to all poisons on Earth. His body had a strong immunity which would not disappear because of the energy field in the sky. Therefore, although the smoke in front of him was poisonous, he was not very worried that he would be poisoned. This was also the reason why he dared to enter the tiger's den alone. The harsh natural environment here was an advantage for him. After his body adapted to the poisonous environment, Charlotte continued to climb up the hill. After avoiding the observation area of the armed men on the pass, he stood up and climbed higher at a faster speed. There were no armed bandits here, and there were no searchlights, which allowed him to move faster. Climbing up the hill, Charlotte carefully came to the side facing the valley. He lay on a rock and looked up to observe the situation in the valley. There were strange buildings in the valley behind the pass. Some were houses made of large trucks, some are houses made of fragments of spaceships, and some are houses made of rocks. All the houses were built around a circular tent. The tent was huge, and it looked a bit like a Mongolian yurt. The tent was round, and so were all the buildings surrounding it. It looked like a dirty black bun with bean paste sprinkled on it. If it was a town, then there were industrial buildings on the outskirts of the town. There were oil wells that were producing crude oil, and huge metal rods were poking into the ground. There were also oil refineries. The chimneys of the oil refineries were emitting fire and smoke. There was oil, and the tanks had fuel. Oil could also be used to generate electricity and produce other things. Just from this observation, Charlotte had a hunch that Blackbeard was not a simple person. Chapter 1363. There were residential areas and industrial areas. Blackbeard's territory was like a small, self-sufficient city. He attacked Professor Pompey and captured Hanife. Is he trying to obtain AE's technology and build his own kingdom? While observing Blackbeard's territory in the valley, Charlotte thought to himself, feeling a little absurd. After the observation, Charlotte already knew the situation in the territory like the back of his hand. There were mountains on both sides of the valley that emitted poisonous gas. Only the canyon in the middle was normal and didn't emit poisonous gas. In addition, the wind in the canyon was very strong, and the air circulation was very fast. Even if poisonous gas flowed from both sides, the wind in the canyon would quickly disperse the poisonous gas, and it would have little impact on people. Of course, there would be some impact, but for these desperados, what was a little poisonous gas that affected their health? No one would care at all. Charlotte moved toward the gate tower at the pass. His plan was very simple. He would kill the armed bandits on the gate tower and then open the big iron gate for Rihua and Hanife to quickly pass through. This plan wasn't made before he came, but after observing the situation in the valley. Blackbeard's town was built on the side of the road, and most of the armed bandits were guarding the more valuable oil wells and refineries. There were very few people patrolling the road. As long as they were careful enough, it wasn't impossible to sneak into the territory and pass through the canyon without anyone noticing. On the pass made of tank and spaceship fragments, several armed men were chatting. No one noticed that someone was sneaking toward them from the high hillside. It was normal that they didn't care about the situation on both sides of the mountain, because no one had ever climbed those hillsides and made it here alive. They had conducted an experiment where they drove living people to the hillsides on both sides and forced them to climb up by gunfire. Those who died the fastest died within 5 minutes, and those with strong physical resistance only lasted for 10 minutes before dying. With such a harsh natural environment, who would care about the situation on both sides of the hillsides? Two Baldies, that guy should be here tonight. but he's already missed the time to submit the mission to the leader, an armed bandit said. That guy's going to suffer again this time. I think he will get someone to cut his penis. An armed criminal smirked. Last time, his D*CK was cut. Luckily, he could still use it. But if he gets cut again, his woman will probably come to me to solve the problem. Could there be something wrong? Someone said. This area of 800 kilometers is our territory. Other than the rebel army of desolate border city, who would dare to provoke us? It can't be. It must be those two baldies who delayed him. Someone said, I'm afraid the leader is in his tent right now. Those women are going to suffer again, someone said. What tent? It's called the King's Mushroom, an armed bandit corrected. Ha! That's right, King forgot. The leader's tent is called the King's Mushroom, ha! One of the armed thugs laughed exaggeratedly. I really don't know why someone as strong as our boss would name his tent like that. The conversation at the mountain pass was captured by Charlotte's ears, and he felt a sense of urgency in his heart. The two baldies mentioned by the armed thugs were obviously referring to the bald man who was eaten by Sunflower. His mission submission time was tonight. He definitely wouldn't be able to come back to submit the mission. If Blackbeard suspected something was wrong, he might send people to chase after him, and at the same time, he would strengthen the blockade of the road. At that time, it would be very difficult to pass through this canyon again. The muzzle of the Avenger 1000 quietly peeked out from behind a rock. The muzzle was equipped with a well-made silencer. Not only could it eliminate the sound of gunfire, but it could also increase the firing speed and range of the bullet. Charlotte quickly locked onto a target. There were a total of 5 targets on the tower of the mountain pass. It wasn't difficult to kill them, but it would be very difficult to kill all the remaining targets after killing 1 or 2 targets, and the remaining targets still wouldn't open fire. Charlotte's brain began to calculate. The firing speed of the Avenger 1000 is 0. 5 seconds per bullet. To kill 5 targets, I will need at least 3. 5 seconds. But once I kill the first and second target, the third, fourth, and fifth target will have enough time to open fire. Once the gunfire starts, Blackbeard's men will definitely rush over. At this moment, the locked-on target walked to the front of the second target, borrowing the second target's light to smoke. The third target also moved a step and leaned against the metal railing to chat with the fourth target. The fifth target walked to a corner, unzipped his pants, and peed out of the mountain pass. The best opportunity to shoot and kill had appeared. It was at this moment. Pooh! The body of the Avenger 1000 vibrated, and a bullet flew out. In an instant, it crossed a distance of tens of meters and pierced into the back of the head of the first target. Then, it exited from the forehead and pierced through the head of the second target. Pooh! Almost without any pause, the second bullet flew out from the muzzle, piercing through the heads of the third and fourth targets in the same line. Blood and brain matter splattered everywhere, and the 4 targets fell to the ground one after another in 5 seconds. The sound of the bodies falling to the ground alerted the 5th target who was peeing in the corner. He did not even have time to pull up his zipper before he turned around to check the situation. At that moment, a bullet pierced through his right eye and flew out from the back of his head. All the targets had fallen to the ground. 3 shots to kill 5 targets. Charlotte had only used 2 seconds. The armed criminals at the mountain pass had all been cleared. Charlotte stood up from his hiding place and quickly slid down the hill to the tower of the mountain pass. He found a switch to open the iron gate, but just as he was about to open the gate, a ball of light suddenly appeared in the sky. Charlotte looked up and was instantly shocked. It was a disc-shaped aircraft belonging to the Blue Moon people. It was very fast, and when he saw it, it was already whistling over. In an instant, it flew over the circular town in the middle of the canyon. Are the Blue Moon people going to attack here? Charlotte guessed in his heart. Then, he could not help but smile. If that's the case, it's a good thing for us. Riwa, Hani Fei, and I can take advantage of the chaos to pass through this canyon and go to desolate border city. However, just as Charlotte was secretly feeling lucky, thinking that there would be a battle between the hunter and the prey, the disc-shaped aircraft slowly descended to the ground. A few people walked out of the circular tent, as if they were welcoming the blue moon people who were about to land. Xiaolei was too far away, and his eyes had lost their ability to see clearly, so he couldn't see the features of those people at all. He then raised the Avenger 1000 and used the scope to observe. This time he could see clearly. It was a man wearing a black robe and a black hat, as well as a few women. The man wearing a black robe and a black hat was about 2 meters tall, and he was so strong that it was almost to the point of being abnormal. His face was ferocious, and he had no eyebrows, but there was a thick black beard on his chin. His black robe was slightly open, and his exposed chest was high. His muscles looked like they were made of steel, giving a very strong visual impact. There was no need for further observation. Just by looking at the features, Charlotte could determine the identity of the man. He was Blackbeard. Behind Blackbeard were 4 women, 2 Asian women, 1 Caucasian woman, and 1 African woman. Although it was a cold night, they did not have much clothes on, and a lot of their skin was exposed. Each of them had a voluptuous body, and their bodies were very hot. Their sexy figures and the bright colors of their skin made them a rather eye-catching and beautiful scenery. When he saw Blackbeard, Charlotte suddenly had the urge to shoot Blackbeard, but the other party was about 4,000 meters away. If he used an XL 2500 sniper rifle, it would not be a problem, but if he used an Avenger 1000, it would be a problem. Without 100% confidence, he did not dare to shoot. Because if he shot and Blackbeard did not die, then the joke would be too big. The saucer-shaped aircraft hovered about 2 meters above the ground, and below the aircraft was a ladder. Under the dim blue light, 2 people walked down. There were 2 women, a human woman and a blue moon woman. The blue moon woman was wearing a long blue dress. She had very big eyes, a very small nose and mouth, a delicate face, and long blue hair. She looked like a girl from the anime. The human woman was wearing a tight, white leather coat. The coat was like a second layer of skin for her, and some of her features were very obvious. For example, the bumps on her breasts and the mature bumps and indentations between her long legs. The leather coat clearly outlined these characteristics that belonged to a woman. Her face was delicate and beautiful, and her black eyes were bright and full of life. It gave people a strange and unusual feeling. The only thing that did not match with her sexiness were the 2 curled-up ponytails on her head. The 2 ponytails that were casually tied gave people a neurotic feeling. Through the scope of the sniper rifle, he saw the 2 women walking down from the aircraft. Charlotte was shocked again. The Blue Moon people viewed humans as food, and humans were livestock that provided energy and nourishment for the Blue Moon people's evolution. Why would a human woman be on the same aircraft as a Blue Moon woman? And why would they come to this place? At this time, Blackbeard walked up and then knelt in front of the Blue Moon woman, kissing her boots with his mouth. A giant villain was acting like a devout believer at this time, kneeling down to his goddess. This scene was really strange. Charlotte used the scope to lock on Blackbeard, the Blue Moon woman, and the human woman with the ponytail. He was ready to use the lip-reading spell to read the conversation between the 3. Chapter 1364. Where's the person I'm looking for? The Blue Moon woman spoke in the Blue Moon language, but her words were translated by the ponytailed woman beside her. The ponytailed woman spoke in Chinese very fluently. In the New World, Chinese dominated the language kingdom of the human world. Other languages still existed, but they were not the mainstream. That old man, Professor Pompey, because of an accident, he died. Blackbeard knelt in front of the Blue Moon woman and said. He looked very nervous, afraid of angering the Blue Moon woman. However, he still angered the Blue Moon woman. After listening to the ponytailed woman's translation, the Blue Moon woman suddenly raised her foot and kicked Blackbeard's chest. Blackbeard was stunned for a moment, then obediently fell back. This action of falling to the ground was almost a second after the Blue Moon woman kicked him. So it was not difficult to see that he pretended to fall to the ground to please the Blue Moon woman. You idiot! The Blue Moon woman was very angry. His value alive is much greater than his death. Do you know how valuable he is? AE represents supreme value. The ponytailed woman still translated the Blue Moon Woman's words. Blackbeard got up from the ground and said cautiously, "Although Pompey is dead, we caught Pompey's assistant. He will be sent here soon." An assistant? Yes, Pompey's assistant. He participated in all of Pompey's experiments. We also obtained Pompey's research data, all the experiment records and data. I will let the assistant complete the experiment, Blackbeard said. What if the assistant refuses? The Blue Moon Woman said. Blackbeard said, "No, I have a way to make him obedient. Take me to see the assistant," the Blue Moon Woman said. "He is already on the way. Please follow me. I have prepared a sumptuous dinner for Miss Lancity." Lancity, this was probably the name of the Blue Moon Woman. In the Blue Moon language, this name meant beautiful blue moon, which was much more normal than Isitabu's suicide goddess. "Miss Lulu, please follow me," Blackbeard said to the ponytailed woman. Lulu. This name stunned Charlotte. How could there be such a name? However, it was precisely such a strange name that matched the ponytailed woman very well. It accentuated the strange vibe that she gave off. If it was a normal name like Mat Dongmei or Huji Hua, it wouldn't match. Blackbeard led Lilele and Lon Sidi into his king's mushroom tent. Blackbeard, who was the last to enter, said a few words to the black woman. The black woman then followed him and walked away. It seemed that he had gone to prepare a sumptuous dinner for Lon Sidi. Charlotte couldn't see what was going on in the tent. He moved the scope to the disc-shaped aircraft floating on the ground, and a mark on it immediately entered his sight. The familiar feeling made him remember. Wasn't that the Blue Moon aircraft that was chasing after him and Rihua? He didn't expect that the people who had chased after him and Rihua a few days ago were actually these two women. However, even if those two women had chased after him and Rihua, he didn't intend to sneak into Blackbeard's territory to take revenge. He retracted his sight and activated the activation mechanism of the large iron gate at the entrance. The large iron gate opened with a series of creaking sounds. As soon as the large iron gate opened, a large head popped out from the wild grass by the road, and a pair of bell-like blue eyes stared at the entrance. Rihua had come, and she had already made all the preparations. Charlotte walked to the edge of the platform, waving to Rihua. Hinohana nodded and then walked out of the weeds. Following closely behind Abana, Hani Fei also walked out of the weeds. He had already abandoned the strangely shaped off-road vehicle. There were no fools in the Heavenly Jewel Academy, and even if Charlotte hadn't told him to do so, Hani Fei knew that driving that vehicle would not be able to pass through Blackbeard's territory. Rihua quickly passed through the large iron gate, and when Hani Fei also rushed in, Charlotte closed the large iron gate. He directly jumped down from the entrance, landing right on Rihua's back. Charlotte extended a hand to Hani Fei and said, "Come up." Hani Fei started but did not move. He really wanted to go up, but looking at Rihua's large face and those bell-like blue eyes, his heart was beating like a drum. Charlotte said, "How about you follow behind, and we go first?" As soon as he said that, Han Yifei grabbed Charlotte's hand and jumped up, impatiently wanting to climb onto Rihua's back. Crossing Blackbeard's territory on foot? Furthermore, with Charlotte and Rihua going first, Han Yifei did not even dare to imagine what the result would be. Between the fear of Rihua and the fear of death, he did not hesitate to choose the former. As soon as Han Yifei climbed up, Charlotte gestured to Rihua, once again using his body language and voice to communicate. "Don't go too fast. Be careful. Try not to make too much noise. Come on, let's leave this place." Xiaolei wasn't sure if the flower understood what he was trying to say. After Xiaolei finished his gesture, it let out a small whimper from its throat. Then it began to trot forward on all fours. It weighed a few tons, and it was difficult for it not to make sound. However, under its control, the sound from its feet was actually very soft and not very obvious. On Rihua's back, Charlotte once again used the Avenger 1000 scope to observe the king's mushroom. The tent in the middle of the territory was airtight, and he still could not see what was going on inside. However, just as he was observing the tent again, The black woman brought the children to the front of the tent. The children were dirty, their clothes ragged. 2 girls, 3 boys, all of them no more than 10 years old. The 3 boys' faces were full of fear, and the 2 girls were crying nonstop. The black woman was obviously annoyed by the crying. She kicked one of the boys to the ground, and then slapped the girl behind the boy. The scope could not capture the sound of the slap on the child's face, but Charlotte could feel the burning pain. It was like the slap was on his face. The girl did not dare to cry anymore. She pursed her lips, but the tears could not stop flowing. She looked very pitiful. Charlotte couldn't help but feel a surge of anger in his heart. The 5 children were still so young. They could become scientists, engineers, teachers, doctors, and so on for human exploration of this planet. They could also become mothers and fathers, but now they were about to become food for that lawn CD. This was the current situation of this world. This was the current situation of human beings. Do I have to save the 5 children? Such a voice appeared in Charlotte's heart. This voice had a conscience of reprimand, but also a practical concern. He could shoot to kill the black woman, but once he did, Hani Fei and Rihua would be in a desperate situation. There were at least 200 to 300 armed bandits in Blackbeard's territory. Once a battle broke out, he would not be able to escape alive. Not only him, Hani Fei would also die here or be caught, and this was the result that Blackbeard, Lon Sidi, and Lil Lele wanted to see the most. To save or not to save, this seemed like a simple choice, but for Charlotte, this was an extremely complicated and difficult choice. On one side was conscience, on the other side was rationality. He was sandwiched in the middle. It was very uncomfortable. An armed bandit came over with 2 buckets of water. The black woman scolded the 5 children and used the towels in the buckets to wipe the dirt off their bodies. This scene made Xia Lei's eyes spit fire. Blackbeard wanted to feed the children to Lon Sidi as delicacies, and this was already an inhumane thing to do, but he actually wanted the children to wash their own bodies. The children wiped their bodies with tears in the cold wind. The children's young bodies shivered. Rihua continued to run along the road. The other end of the small canyon appeared at the other end of the road. In that direction, there was still a tower pass built with abandoned tanks and spaceship metal fragments. In that direction, there were also 5 armed bandits guarding. The direction of this pass was the border city. The Blackbeard bandit gang controlled this place. It was equivalent to choking the border city's throat. When it was about 2,000 meters away from the second pass, the heliotrope stopped. She looked back at Charlotte. Although she did not make a sound, her eyes seemed to say, "It's your turn." Charlotte shook his head hard, forcibly clearing the 5 poor children from his mind. He must concentrate on dealing with the problem in front of him. He could not be careless at all. Charlotte jumped down from Rihua's back, ran out of the road, and rushed directly to the hillside where the poisonous smoke billowed. Hani Fei stared dumbfoundedly at Charlotte, who climbed up the hillside and disappeared in the poisonous smoke. At that moment, he even wanted to call out to Charlotte, but Charlotte was too fast. He couldn't see him before he could open his mouth. Rihua also left the road, and then carefully moved toward the pass. But before she moved forward 500 meters, Charlotte appeared in front of her. He was holding the Avenger 1000 in his hand, and there was still a little poisonous smoke left in his hair. Xiaolei hurried over. "Hani Fei, I've taken care of the armed bandits at the pass. Go open the door and head towards Desolate City with Rihua. I'll meet up with you later." "What are you going to do?" Hani Fei asked nervously. Charlotte's eyes moved to the direction of Mushroom King. His eyes were cold. "I have a personal matter to deal with." But Hani Fei's eyes were full of worry. "You should be very clear about the danger of staying. You should think about it again." "I have decided, let's go." Charlotte patted Rihua's neck and pointed in the direction of the pass. Rihua nodded her head and rushed over with her forelegs. It never hesitated, nor would it doubt any of Charlotte's decisions. Chapter 1365. The night was deep, and the poisonous fog in the sky covered the cold radiance of the blue moon. The place without light was pitch black. However, this did not affect Charlotte's vision. Although his eyes had lost their ability, he could still see normally in a dark environment. His eyes could still see very far and very clearly. After all, the degree of evolution of his body was close to perfection. Next to the king's mushroom, the 5 children had already washed their bodies. They covered their breasts and the area between their legs with their hands. Although they were still very young, they knew shame. The armed gangster who came to fetch the water left with the empty bucket. Only the 5 children and the black woman were left in the open space next to the tent. The black woman let the 5 children line up in a column, and the youngest and shortest girl was at the front. She reached out and grabbed the little girl's arm and said fiercely, "Be honest. If you make Miss Lawn-Seedy unhappy, I will let the horned pig eat you." The little girl was in pain, but she bit her lips hard to stop herself from crying out. Tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. "Cry. Don't cry." The black woman slapped the back of the laughing girl's head. "When you see Miss Lawn-Seedy, you must smile. Do you remember? Do you remember?" The little girl wiped her tears with the back of her hand and nodded. "Do you remember?" The black woman's eyes swept over the 4 children behind the little girl. The children behind the little girl also nodded. "It's good that you're obedient. Go in. Miss Lawn-Seedy will definitely treat you well. She might even give you candy to eat." The corner of the black woman's mouth showed a trace of sly smile. Just as she finished speaking, a bullet suddenly flew over and pierced her temple. She didn't even have time to feel it before she died and fell to the ground. The 5 children froze for a moment, then turned and ran. 500 meters away, in a dark area at the edge of the circular town, Charlotte's mouth showed a gratified smile. The 5 children were very smart. They knew what the result of entering the tent after washing up was, so when the black woman fell to the ground, they turned around and ran. The sound of the black woman's body falling to the ground alerted the people in the tent. A white woman quickly walked out. The dead body of the black woman on the ground startled her, and she opened her mouth wide. However, before she could make a sound, Xiaolei moved his finger and a flower of blood bloomed on her head. Charlotte's gaze was locked onto the exit of the tent, waiting for his next target to come out. But there was no third target coming out of the tent. What he waited for was an angry roar. "Assassin East." It was Blackbeard's voice, as loud as the tolling of a bell. "Kill him." Puff. Charlotte fired a shot at the tent. The bullet flew out from the muzzle of the Avenger 1000. In the blink of an eye, it pierced through the canvas of the tent. But he couldn't see if he had hit anything. Puff, puff, puff. Although he couldn't be sure if the bullet hit the target, Charlotte still fired with determination. If he was lucky, he might be able to hit the target in the tent, whether it was Blackbeard, Lelele, or Lawn-Seedy. As long as he hit any one of them, he would make a profit. Many armed criminals rushed out from different buildings and searched toward the east. The 5 children cleverly hid in a building and escaped the armed robbers' search. Charlotte memorized the building where the 5 children were hiding and quickly ran toward the oil refinery in the north of town. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of gunfire came from behind him, and bullets whizzed over his head. More armed criminals joined the search team. They couldn't see Charlotte in the darkness, but that didn't stop them from shooting randomly. Charlotte crouched down and sprinted toward the oil refinery. His speed was as fast as it could be. The armed criminals in the oil refinery appeared at the guard tower and the gate, vigilantly staring at the dark area around the oil refinery. An armed criminal shone a searchlight into the dark area around the oil refinery, but before he could complete his search, a bullet flew over and left a round hole in his forehead. Bang, 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 tot-a-tot. The armed personnel in the oil refinery also started shooting randomly, and bullets rained down on the dark area. But after that, no one was killed. The mysterious gunman seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Inside the king's mushroom, Blackbeard climbed up from the ground. Beside him, a Caucasian woman was lying on the ground, and a bullet hole in her back was bleeding. She wasn't dead yet. She looked at Blackbeard with pleading eyes. But what she got was not an affectionate farewell, nor was it help. Instead, it was Blackbeard's big foot. Blackbeard stepped on the neck of the white woman who was shot. Crack! The Caucasian woman's neck was instantly broken. She spat out her tongue, and her eyes lost their light. "Ah, who is it?" Blackbeard roared. He looked like he had lost his mind. B asterisk starred. Lil Lele also yelled at Blackbeard. You're dead. You put Miss Lon Seedy in danger. Your middleman status has been revoked. Just wait for the Blue Moon People's Army to come and turn you and your people into compressed biscuits. Blackbeard suddenly shifted his gaze to Lil Lele. His eyebrowless eyes were filled with anger and murderous intent. Lil Lele subconsciously took a step back. Lon Seedy stood up from her hiding place and looked straight at Blackbeard. Her eyes were completely blue, and even her pupils could not be seen. They were so blue that they looked like two deep blue gems. Kneel! Lon Seedy's voice was full of magic. Plop! Blackbeard knelt on the ground, and one of his heads hung down. Based on Blackbeard's ferocious appearance and his giant body, when he was with Lil Lele and Lon Seedy, it was like a real-life version of the Beauty and the Beast. But this beast looked very weak. In front of Lon Seedy, he did not even have the slightest bit of courage to resist. If Charlotte was here, he would definitely notice that Lon Seedy was controlling Blackbeard's brain. And at this time, the blue moon in the sky did not activate its energy field. Lon Seedy controlled Blackbeard's brain, and Lil Lele became brave again. She took a big step forward and kicked Blackbeard's face. There was a muffled sound. Where her foot moved away from Blackbeard's face, blood flowed out of Blackbeard's nose and mouth. Blackbeard's face also had an additional footprint made of dust, and he looked very pathetic. But even after suffering such humiliation, he did not react with the slightest bit of anger. He was still kneeling in front of Lon Seedy, his head lowered, humble and docile. Lil Lele was still angry. She suddenly pulled out a military knife and stabbed Blackbeard's heart. Enough, Lon Seedy said. He doesn't feel anything now. He won't know even if you kill him. Keep him. He is still useful to me. Lil Lele turned sideways and stabbed the military knife in her hand into the lower abdomen of a white woman who was also on the ground. Lon Seedy did not allow her to kill Blackbeard, but she did not stop her from killing others. She had the intention to kill. If she did not kill someone, she would feel very uncomfortable. The white woman who was stabbed screamed and fell to the ground, holding her stomach. Sister Lon Seedy, quick, don't waste it. Lil Lele smiled innocently. Her smile gave the illusion that she was just a 17 or 18-year-old romantic girl. Not to mention killing someone, even stepping on an ant would make her sad for a long time. If Charlotte was there, he would definitely think of someone, and that was Isotab. This Lil Lele's personality was too similar to Isotab's. Lon Seedy glared at Lil Lele. She walked to the side of the white woman who was stabbed and reached out to grab her head. No, no. The white woman begged in pain. Due to fear, a yellow liquid flowed out from between her legs, and the stench spread throughout the tent. Such dirty food, disgusting. Lon Seedy released her hand. The white woman who was stabbed fell to the ground. Her eyes had turned the color of a dead fish, and there was no longer any color or presence of life in her body. In just 10 seconds, she had turned from a living person to a corpse that seemed to have been stored for a week. I don't want to die. The last yellow woman suddenly crawled up from the ground and rushed to the tent exit. Lon Seedy's body swooped to the entrance of the tent. She raised her right arm and placed her right palm on the yellow woman's face. Lil Lele tilted her head as she watched Lon Seedy eat. Her face maintained that innocent smile from beginning to end. Lon Seedy released her hand, and the last yellow woman also fell to the ground. Her death was the same as the white woman who was stabbed. In just a few seconds, she had turned from a living person to a corpse that seemed to have been stored for a week. Blackbeard was still kneeling on the ground. All of his women were dead, but he did not react at all. I've already hypnotized this guy. He won't disobey any of your orders. Command him to catch the assassin and the people I want. Lon Seedy said, Do you want to go back alone? Lil Lele curled her lips as if she was unwilling. Lon Seedy walked to Lil Lele's side and pulled her into her arms. She kissed her lips and said, I don't want to leave you, but you know how suspicious that guy is. I have to go back. Remember, you must catch that assistant. Okay, after I catch him, I'll contact you immediately. Lil Lele said as she also kissed Lon Seedy's lips. Lancidi grabbed little Lele's buttocks. "You little slut, don't let me down." With that, she turned and walked out of the tent. Soon, the disc-shaped aircraft took off and flew toward the blue moon in the sky. In the tent, Blackbeard shook his head as if he wanted to wake himself up, but his head was still very dizzy. He saw the bodies of 3 women on the ground. He only remembered that he had stepped on one of them. He had no memory of how the other 2 died, but he did not care how they died. "Pa!" A white palm landed on Blackbeard's face, and a burning pain spread across his face. Blackbeard looked at Lil Lele, who had slapped him for no reason. But strangely, he did not feel any anger in his heart, only obedience and humility. "What are you still kneeling for? Ugly ghost, gather all your men and kill that gunman. Find me the assistant you lost. Otherwise, I'll cut off your D*CK. Lil Lele roared at Blackbeard. Blackbeard stood up with a bang and started to walk out. Boom! A huge explosion suddenly came from the direction of the refinery. The shockwave of the explosion was instantly pushed here. The tent shook violently and the ground trembled. Lil Lele's body lost balance and fell to the ground. I'm going to kill him, Lil Lele roared. Chapter 1366. Boom! Another earth-shattering explosion occurred, and the oil refinery in the canyon was completely turned into a sea of fire. The first explosion was an oil storage tank, and the second explosion was also an oil storage tank. The fuel stored in the tank was pushed far away by the shockwave of the explosion, and everywhere it passed was filled with flames. The oil refinery machinery exploded, and the armed bandits in the refinery were burned to ashes. But this was not the worst-case scenario. The worst-case scenario was that the fuel and flames flew into the round town and ignited it. The fire spread rapidly, and there was not a single fire truck in the town that could put out the fire. Blackbeard's territory had many strange and horrifying tanks, but there was not a single normal fire truck. That was true. Who could expect these outlaws to drive a fire truck to put out the fire? The residents of the town began to scatter, and after rushing out of the town, they split into 2 groups. One group fled to the entrance of the canyon, and the other to the exit. The people here were not all bad people. Many of them were kidnapped and brought here to extract crude oil for Blackbeard. They were ordered around by Blackbeard as slaves. Now that they had a chance to escape, how could they stay here? Bang, 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 gunshots rang out, and bullets flew toward the fleeing people. Some fell, but no one was willing to stop. Staying here would mean death sooner or later, so they were more willing to take a gamble in exchange for a chance to escape this hell. Catch them! Blackbeard roared as he fired a heavy machine gun at the fleeing crowd. Some armed bandits began to chase after the fleeing people, and the scene was chaotic. Lil Lele smiled happily. This is really a grand barbecue party. She made a swan dance. I really want to see the guy who made this barbecue party, and then dance with him in this fire. She looked at Blackbeard, who was firing a machine gun, and pointed at a slow-moving old man. Hey, ugly ghost, kill him. Blackbeard adjusted the direction of the machine gun and pulled the trigger. Dang, dang, dang. A string of bullets flew toward the old man. The old man's body was instantly torn apart by the machine gun bullets, and he fell to the ground in several pieces. Ha ha! Lil Lele laughed happily. Troublemaker, troublemaker, where are you hiding? Big sister is coming to catch you. You must hide well. It won't be fun if she catches you. The troublemaker she was talking about was obviously Charlotte. Gunshots, flames, and in the chaos, Charlotte's figure appeared in the round town that was engulfed in a sea of fire. When he shot the oil storage tank of the refinery, he took advantage of the chaos caused by the explosion to sneak into the round town. The reason he stayed was to save the 5 poor children. He couldn't and didn't have the ability to save everyone here, but he wanted to bring the 5 children out. Xiaolei kicked open the tightly shut door and dashed into a room. The room was dark, but he still saw the 5 children hiding in the room. They were lying under a dirty bed, looking at him nervously as he barged in from the door. One of the children was holding a knife in his hand, biting his lip, waiting for the opportunity to stab him. Don't be afraid. I'm here to save you. Charlotte said aloud. "Remember that black woman? I shot her." The 5 children did not move. "Come out, I can see you. If you continue to hide under that bed, the fire will soon spread and burn you to death. Even if you aren't burned to death, you will be captured by Blackbeard's men and eventually become food for the Blue Moon people. You could decide for yourselves. I'm leaving now. You can follow me if you want." Charlotte turned around and walked towards the door. The 5 children hesitated for a moment before climbing out from under the bed one by one. "Uncle, save us. We can do anything," the youngest girl said pitifully. Charlotte's heart ached slightly. "Follow me closely. Don't get separated." The fire quickly spread to the center of the circular town. Xiale led the 5 children to move stealthily between the buildings, moving in the direction where the fire was spreading. At this time, Blackbeard and the armed bandits were trying their best to capture the people who had escaped and find the assassin, so no one paid attention to the situation in the burning town. But this situation would not last long. Once Blackbeard and his men controlled the chaotic situation, they would concentrate all their strength to deal with him. He had to fight for time with the fire, and he had to fight against Blackbeard. After some distance, Blackbeard's tent entered Charlotte's sight. Charlotte suddenly remembered something, and he pointed to the west of the town for the 5 children. "Where are you going? I'll find you soon." "Uncle, you don't want us anymore." The youngest girl's mouth twitched, and it looked like she was about to cry. Charlotte touched the little girl's head. "Uncle won't abandon you in a situation like this. Uncle just wants to go to the white tent to get something. Count to 200, and I'll catch up to you. Go, go." The 5 boys broke into a run. As the little girl ran, she counted 1, 2, 3. When the little girl counted to 9, Charlotte had already rushed into Blackbeard's tent. What he was looking for was the research data and experiment records that Blackbeard had stolen from Professor Pompey. Those things must not be left to Blackbeard, and definitely not to the evil Lilele and Lon City. The tent was quiet. The fire outside penetrated the canvas of the tent, and everything inside could be seen clearly. Charlotte's gaze moved to the 3 corpses lying on the ground, and he realized that 2 of the corpses had strange causes of death. These 2 women were eaten by the Blue Moon people. Charlotte was shocked. Why is this method similar to isotabs? In Pingon Village, he had heard Li Ni's description of the Blue Moon people preying on humans. Li and I said that the Blue Moon people used a special hunting equipment. The equipment would melt the human's flesh while extracting energy. However, this method of eating was obviously Isotab's method. Could it be that the Blue Moon woman named Lon City had evolved close to Isotab's? This speculation made Charlotte secretly nervous. If this speculation was true, then the Blue Moon woman named Lon City was an extremely dangerous existence. Wait a minute. Xiale suddenly remembered something. His eyes moved to the dead body of a Caucasian woman whose brain had been eaten. "This world is sealed by Lon Yu's energy field. I can't use my power here." "How'd you do it?" Boom! An explosion came from the direction of the oil well. The ground trembled slightly. Charlotte quickly stopped thinking, and his eyes quickly scanned the entire tent. 2 seconds later, his eyes stopped on a safe made from the fragments of the Blue Moon people's spaceship. The material of the safe was impervious to bullets, but the lock was just a normal lock. Poo-pee-you. 2 bullets flew out from the muzzle of the Avenger 1000, and each bullet hit the lock on the safe. After the second bullet, the lock opened with a click. Charlotte opened the safe and saw the things inside. There were some Blue Moon dollars, a Blue Moon energy pistol, and a briefcase. Xiale opened the briefcase and took a look. He immediately breathed a sigh of relief. There was a stack of experimental data in the briefcase, which was related to the AE research. There was also a portable hard drive that stored data. Even though it was different from the portable hard drives that he had seen before, from the interface and the label on it, it was easy to recognize. Xiale put everything in the safe into his briefcase, and the Blue Moon people's energy pistol was sheathed on his belt. After taking the things, Charlotte left the tent and chased after the 5 children. 189, 180, 181. The little girl was still counting, and her tears could not stop flowing. "Stop counting. He's not coming." the oldest boy said. The oldest boy said, "He abandoned us. I knew he would do that. We are just children that no one wants." 191, 192. The youngest girl was still counting. For some reason, she was willing to believe in that strange uncle. The edge of the circular town was right in front of them. They would be able to get out in a dozen steps. Two armed criminals suddenly appeared at the intersection. The 5 children stopped in their tracks. "Huh, there are 5 little fellows here. Catch them." One of the armed criminals called out to his partner as he approached the 5 children with a gun. 197, 198. The little girl's voice was trembling, and her tears flowed even faster. The closer she got to 200, the more nervous she became. Would that strange uncle abandon her? Pooh! Blood suddenly blossomed from the head of the armed gangster who was rushing over with a gun, and he fell to the ground with a loud crash. Before the other armed criminal could raise his assault rifle, another bullet flew over and exploded his head. The 5 children turned around in a panic. At that moment, the strange uncle entered their line of sight. The fire was burning, and the uncle was running. 199, 200. A smile appeared on the little girl's face, but her tears flowed uncontrollably. "Let's go." Charlotte picked up the youngest girl and rushed out of the circular town with the 5 children, running toward the dark area where there was no one. The road under their feet was a road to survival, and it led to a hillside that was emitting poisonous smoke. "Uncle, we can't go there." The oldest boy stopped near the hillside. "There's poison there. We'll die there." Charlotte said, "If you do as I say, you won't die. If we want to leave this place alive, we have to leave from there." The valley was filled with armed criminals in tanks searching for them. The chances of leaving from the entrance or exit of the valley were almost zero. The armed criminals wouldn't search the hillside that was emitting poisonous smoke. Even if they wanted to, they wouldn't have the ability to do so, so this was the only way to survive. "I'll go by myself." The oldest boy suddenly turned around and ran. The other 2 boys hesitated for a moment before following him toward the entrance of the valley. A girl chased after the 3 boys after running a few steps. Charlotte said angrily, "You'll all die." The oldest boy stopped and looked back at Charlotte. "You must have gone to Blackbeard's tent to steal money, right?" "You." Charlotte was infuriated by this rebellious child. "If we go up the mountain with you, we'll die. I'd rather believe in myself." The oldest boy turned around and ran toward the entrance of the valley. The 2 boys and the girl followed his footsteps and ran toward the entrance of the valley. In that direction, the tanks were roaring and the sounds of gunshots and screams were mixed together. The only one who stayed was the youngest girl. She looked at Charlotte eagerly. "Uncle, I believe you. I'll go with you." Charlotte took out his military knife and cut open his palm. Then he handed his bleeding palm to the little girl. "Drink some of my blood. It can help you detoxify." The little girl nodded and caught the blood with her mouth. After feeding the little girl his blood, Charlotte used the military knife to cut a piece of cloth from his clothes. He wet the cloth with his blood and covered the little girl's face with it. When he was about to climb up the hillside with the little girl in his arms, Charlotte glanced in the direction where the 4 children had escaped. He saw them running desperately toward the entrance of the valley. Would they be able to escape alive? Charlotte didn't care at all. Everyone had their own fate. The 4 children had made a decision that they thought was right, so they had to accept the consequences. He had never been a savior. He couldn't save everyone. Chapter 1367. The light of dawn dispelled the darkness, and the light of the eternal sun shone on the grassland. The green grassland extended forward like a carpet, with no end in sight. A group of white wildebeests appeared in Charlotte's sight. They were tall and strong, with snow-white bodies. They were like unicorns in Western mythology, representing nobility and the spring festival, but they did not have wings. The appearance of Rihua alarmed the wildebeests. They ran away, and the sound of their hooves rumbled like cavalry charging on an ancient battlefield. Rihua slowed down and walked forward, facing the sunlight of the eternal sun. There were 3 people sitting on its back. Charlotte was at the front, the little girl was in the middle, and Hanife was at the back. "It's safe. We got rid of the pursuers." Hanife let out a long sigh of relief, and his tense nerves relaxed. He even suddenly lost the strength to support himself, and suddenly slipped down from Rihua's back and fell on the grass. Charlotte looked at Hanife, who fell on the grass, speechlessly, and then patted Rihua's neck. "Rihua, you've been running for most of the night. Take a rest." "Oh." Rihua made a sound, and then lay on the grass. Charlotte jumped down from its back, and then carried the little girl down. He said with a smile, "The little guy is quite heavy. How old are you this year?" The little girl said in a crisp voice, "Uncle, I'm 8 years old this year. My name is Gu Kursin." Gu Kursin? Charlotte was stunned for a moment. Her name was only one word different from the name of the woman he was familiar with. Her name suddenly reminded him of that woman. But he knew very well that the little girl in front of him was definitely not that woman. She was only 8 years old, and that woman had already died on Earth. "My name is Gu Kursin." Gu Kursin said carefully, "Uncle, what's your name?" Only then did Charlotte come back to his senses. He smiled. "My name is Charlotte. You can call me Uncle Xia." "Uncle Xia, Uncle Xia." Gu Kursin's little mouth was very sweet, and she immediately called out. Charlotte reached out and patted Gu Kursin's little head. "Tell Uncle Xia, where is your home? Where are your parents?" Gu Kursin's little mouth twitched, and she was about to cry again. "My father and mother were eaten by the Blue Moon people. My grandfather brought me out of the village, but we were caught by Blackbeard's men. They asked me to go to the refinery as well. My grandfather died of exhaustion in the refinery." Charlotte's heart ached, and the corners of his eyes became a little moist. Hanife said, "Mr. Xia, do you have any plans? I'll go to Desolate Border City and hand you over to the Resistance Army. Then I'll go to the Dark Forest." Charlotte said, "What about me?" Gu Kursin said anxiously, "Uncle Xia, bring me along. I could do anything. I can wash clothes and I can cook. You can also teach me how to use a gun, and I can fight alongside you to kill the bad guys." Charlotte squatted in front of Gu Kursin and reached out to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes. "I will entrust you to the Resistance Army. They will take good care of you. It's not that Uncle Xia doesn't want to bring you along, but Uncle Xia can only walk this path alone." "Uncle Xia." Gu Kursin's tears flowed out again. Charlotte understood her feelings very well. She was lonely in this world. It was not easy for her to meet someone who could protect her, but he was going to leave her. How could she not be sad? "Don't worry, everything will be fine." Charlotte held Gu Kursin in his arms and comforted her, but he didn't know when he would fulfill this promise. Perhaps there would never be a time to fulfill it. "Roar!" Rihua roared at Charlotte. "We should go." Charlotte picked up Gu Kursin and said, "Come, Uncle Xia will carry you up." Hanife also got up from the grass and walked to Charlotte's side. "Don't worry, I will help you take care of her. Consider it as a repayment for saving my life." Charlotte smiled at Hanife. Between men, sometimes there were some things that didn't need to be said at all. Once again, Hibana set off towards the east. Deep footprints were left in the places where it ran. In a few days, green weeds would grow out of the soil again. Life was reincarnating every moment. Half a month later, the vast grassland was left behind, and a city appeared at the end of his vision. The moment he saw it, Charlotte was shocked. Towering skyscrapers stood under the sky. Some had been blown apart, while others were covered in trees and vines. These buildings were in his field of vision, and he couldn't see the end of them. This city was so big that even New York and London on Earth couldn't compare. However, it was already dead. There was no sign of life. When this city was still alive, there were at least tens of millions of people living in this city. But how many people were still living here now? Putting aside the hunting and killing of the Blue Moon people, the food, water, and medical treatment alone could kill the population. Therefore, even if there were people living in this city, there wouldn't be many. This is the Desolate Border City. It was built 1,000 years ago in the Holy Thunder era. It was a city in the east of the human territory. Hanife also looked at the desolate city in the distance. At its peak, it had a population of more than 67 million. In the Millennium Plan of the Holy Thunder era, it also played a very important role. In that plan, it would be a bridgehead city for the expansion of the human territory into the dark forest. Later, when the Blue Moon people invaded, it was almost the last city to be destroyed because of its special geographical location. Charlotte asked, "How many people are still living here?" Han Yifei shook his head. "I don't know, but I guess it's not more than 100,000. Charlotte said 100,000 is indeed not a lot for such a big city, but from the perspective of food and water, it is a very large number. The people here will definitely face the search of the Blue Moon people. How do they survive?" Han Yifei smiled. "Have you never been to a big city?" "No," Charlotte said. This was the first time he saw a big human city. Han Yifei said, "Then it's not strange. The people in the city have long been moved underground. The Blue Moon people usually come out to hunt with aircrafts, and they rarely go underground. The population of the Blue Moon people is actually very small, so they won't rashly go deep into the ground to take action. If they do, their advanced weapons will be greatly reduced, and it will also bring them casualties, which they absolutely cannot accept." Charlotte suddenly remembered a conversation he had with Keisha Ruiz. In that conversation, Keisha Ruiz had said that the number of people like Isotab was very small, and they could not withstand a war with heavy casualties. That was why Isotab took action first to turn Earth into a safe hunting ground. Now, Han Yifei also said the same thing, which was the same point of view as Keisha Ruiz. This meant that the number of Blue Moon people was really very small. This made Charlotte secretly heave a sigh of relief. If the number of Blue Moon people living on the Blue Moon was also like that of the human race, reaching billions or even more, then the human race would really have no hope. This situation gave him a glimmer of hope, which was very important to him. Let's go into the city," Han Yifei said. Charlotte patted Hina's neck. "Hina, let's go." Hina did not move. It looked up into the distance. Although he could not see what was in that direction, Charlotte knew that it was looking at its hometown, the Forest of Rest. Hina lay down. This action was to let the three people sitting on its back down. Charlotte read Hina's body language. He jumped down from Hina's back and said at the same time, "You guys come down too. Hina is going." Han Yifei also jumped down from Hina's back. He then caught Gu Kursin and helped her back to the ground. Gu Kursin touched the scales on Hina's stomach reluctantly and asked, "Uncle Xia, where is it going?" Charlotte said, "It's going home. Will it come back?" Gu Kursin asked. Charlotte smiled bitterly. "I don't know about that. You and Uncle Han go first. I want to say goodbye to Hina." "Uncle Xia." Gu Kursin still wanted to say something. "Kursin, let Uncle Xia say goodbye to Hina. Let's go first." Han Yifei took Gu Kursin's little hand and walked towards the desolate city. Charlotte came to Hina and said, "Give me a few days. I'll come to you after I finish my business. Wait for me in the Forest of Rest. I won't break my promise." A series of sounds came out of Hina's mouth, but no one knew if it understood Charlotte's words. Charlotte patiently drew a few pictures on the ground and then repeated what he had just said. "Roar." This time, Rihua nodded. This action seemed to be telling Xia Lei that it understood what he said. "Wait for me." Charlotte patted Hina's neck and then turned around and left. Hina watched Charlotte walk away and then ran towards the side of the desolate city. It has an instinctive rejection of human cities. It would rather spend more time to go around than go through the city. Charlotte caught up with Han Yifei and Gu Kursin, and the three entered the desolate city. The streets of the city were empty. The wreckage of vehicles, tanks, and even the wreckage of huge spaceships could be seen everywhere. Some were abandoned by people, and some were relics of war. The traces of explosions and the wreckage of war seemed to silently tell the story of the blood and fire of the past. There were also many people who died because of the war. Their remnant souls seemed to be in this city, in the uninhabited buildings, in a dark corner, unwilling to rest in peace. A gust of wind blew, rolling up the rubbish on the ground. Some flew close to the ground, and some were swept up into the air. Charlotte's melancholy seemed to be swept up. This desolate city evoked his homesickness. Are the women at home all right? Are the children all right? Will the women and children miss him in the days without him? Many guesses, each with a touch of sadness. The desire to go home is still so strong. But when can I go back? Can I still go back? He didn't know. Chapter 1368. Walking through one street after another, Charlotte did not see a single living person. He also did not see any entrance to the underground city. It gave him the feeling that the city was really dead and there would not be a single living person. Along the way, he saw a lot of rats. They were much bigger than the rats on Earth, and the biggest was even bigger than a cat. He did not know if the rats had followed humans to this planet or if they had originally existed on this planet. They were obviously disgusting, but they gave Charlotte a familiar and intimate feeling. If there was a rat from Earth at this time, Charlotte would be willing to be friends with it. Only he could understand his loneliness. The team of 3 people wandered to a river. The river had already dried up, and the riverbed was full of weeds and vines. The buildings on both sides of the riverbank were crooked and collapsed. It was a desolate and dilapidated scene. Several sewer pipes extended from the riverbank to the bottom of the river, but no sewage was discharged. Some of the drainage pipes still had metal nets to intercept garbage. Perhaps because they were made of alloy, they did not rust, but they had lost their luster. Uncle Han, how much longer do we have to walk? I can't walk anymore. Gu Kursin pouted and rubbed her pair of short legs as she walked. It seemed that it was difficult for her to continue. Honey Face said, I don't know. I heard from one of my juniors that the underground entrance to the desolate border city is nearby. I have seen the map and have a little impression of it. But why is there no one? Charlotte suddenly stopped, and his gaze moved to a building that was about to collapse across the river. At that moment, he caught a person. That person had been peeping at him from a window on the 3rd floor of the building. When he looked over, that person was hiding. Hani Fei did not have Charlotte's observation and vigilance. He said, Mr. Xia, have you found anyone? I don't see anything. Are they hiding? Gu Kursin said, We are not from Lanyu. Why would they hide? Stop talking. There is someone. Charlotte said, They already know that we are here. Where? Hani Fei looked around. Why don't I see him? Just as his voice fell, a few people walked out from a nearby building. These people were all armed, and their muzzles were aimed at Charlotte's group. The person on the other side of the river also appeared. He had an Avenger 1000 in his hands. He was obviously a sniper. On the ground, a few armed men quickly spread out and surrounded Charlotte and the other 2. The leader was a man in his 50s. He had a medium build and an ordinary appearance. He was the kind of person who would be hard to spot in a crowd. However, his eyes were as deep as the sea and were unforgettable. Charlotte had made the judgment that he was the leader based on his eyes. Friend, we mean no harm. Please don't point your gun at us. Charlotte raised his hand. Who are you? The leading middle-aged man asked aloud, his voice full of vigilance and suspicion. Charlotte said, It's not convenient for me to say for now. I'm looking for the leader of the resistance army. Are you? If you are, I'd like to talk to you alone. The middle-aged man frowned. A long-haired youth spat on the ground. Who the F***CK do you think you are? You can meet whoever you want to? You can talk alone just because you want to? I've seen too many scumbags like you. Don't you just want to sneak into the underground city? Charlotte wasn't angry. He just shrugged. I'm not lying. I have a reason for coming here. However, I don't know the situation here, so I can't say. Hani Fei's identity was very special. The things he had on him were also very important. He didn't even know who the other party was. Of course, he wouldn't reveal his purpose, let alone reveal his identity. Damn, you still want to quibble. The long-haired youth walked over Charlotte. Xia Lei frowned when he saw the long-haired young man charging at him. He didn't want to cause trouble, but the other party obviously didn't think so. If the other party continued to provoke him, should he respond accordingly? However, once he responded, the conflict would escalate. At that time, he wouldn't be able to guarantee Han Yifei and Gu Kursin's safety. He was in an awkward situation, and he didn't have a solution. The long-haired youth walked in front of Charlotte, grabbed the Avenger 1000 on Charlotte's shoulder, and snatched it. However, even after getting the Avenger 1000, he still wasn't satisfied. He suddenly reached for the backpack on Charlotte's back. Even a clay figurine would have some anger. Charlotte suddenly felt a surge of anger. He tilted his shoulder and dodged the long-haired youth's hand. Then he reached out and grabbed the long-haired youth's wrist and pulled it in front of him. Then he tripped, and the long-haired youth fell to the ground. Crash! A few armed men pulled the safety of their guns. Xiaolei's hand also moved to the Blue Moon People's energy pistol at the back of his waist. At this critical moment, Hanifei suddenly stood in front of Charlotte. "Don't shoot. I'm from the Heavenly Jewel Academy. My name is Hanifei. I want to see Commander Kong, Tu Nana. Damn it, I'll kill you." The long-haired youth who had been thrown to the ground by Charlotte reached out to grab the gun that had fallen to the ground. "Enough," the middle-aged leader shouted. "Kurter, we are not bandits." The long-haired youth called Kurter had a flash of hatred in his eyes, but in the end, he withdrew his intention to attack. "Is what you said true?" The middle-aged leader looked at Hanifei, his eyes still filled with wariness and suspicion. "I have no reason to lie to you. It was Mr. Xia who saved me. Otherwise, I would have died at Blackbeard's hands," Hanifei said. Gu Kursin also said crisply, "And me, Uncle Xia saved me too. He blew up Blackbeard's oil refinery and oil wells." "Wait." The middle-aged leader's gaze shifted to Charlotte's face, and his expression suddenly became strange. "Your surname is Xia?" Charlotte nodded. "Yes, my surname is Xia." "Charlotte?" The middle-aged man's voice was clearly agitated. Charlotte said tentatively, "How do you know my name?" The middle-aged man suddenly laughed. "Ha ha ha. This is the first time I've met you, but there's someone else who isn't. Have you forgotten about him? He's our chief of staff." Charlotte suddenly thought of that heartless uncle, Liang Tao. "My name is He Daoshan, the leader of the Vanguard battle team." He Daoshan walked towards Charlotte, and before Charlotte could extend his hand, he reached out to shake hands with Charlotte. Charlotte also reached out to shake hands with He Daoshan. "Why didn't you mention your name just now?" He Daoshan said. "Even if you were careful not to mention your name, it would have been the same if you mentioned Staff Officer Liang's name." Charlotte smiled bitterly. "I don't think it's my fault. Your people didn't give me a chance to explain." He Daoshan shifted his gaze to Kurt, and the smile on his face disappeared. He said fiercely, "What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and apologize to Mr. Xia." Kurt's face turned red, but he didn't want to apologize to Charlotte. Charlotte said, forget it. It's a small matter. You must apologize." He Daoshan roared at Kurt, "Bastard. I told you to apologize to Mr. Xia. This is an order. Military orders must be obeyed." Kurt braced himself and walked in front of Charlotte. "I'm sorry, Mr. Xia. I offended you just now. Please forgive me. It's nothing. We won't get to know each other if we don't fight," Charlotte said. Kurt avoided Charlotte's gaze, but there was a hint of hatred born from shame in his eyes. "Mr. Xia, come with me." He Daoshan turned and walked into the building. Charlotte picked up his Avenger 1000 sniper rifle from the ground, then pulled Gu Kursin's small hand and walked into the building. The building was filled with trash, and it was hundreds of years old. There were even a few moldy human skeletons. There was no light, and the inside of the building was very dim. With the trash and skeletons everywhere, it gave off a gloomy and scary feeling. "We kept these things because we don't want people to know where the entrance to the underground city is. Our situation is very difficult, so we must be careful." He Daoshan led the way while explaining the situation to Charlotte. Charlotte said, "Is Nana here?" "The commander-in-chief isn't here. She's in another base, but if she knows you're here, she'll definitely fly over." He Daoshan paused, then smiled. "I'm curious. Why didn't you mention Chief of Staff Liang? I thought you'd ask if Chief of Staff Liang was here, but you asked our commander-in-chief." Charlotte smiled. "I know he's here. Why would I ask him?" "Chief of Staff Liang said a lot about you, and he praised you a lot," He Daoshan said. "He said you two have a good relationship. So, yes, I'm actually not very familiar with him," Charlotte said. He Daoshan was speechless. They passed through a corridor, and at the end of the corridor was a kitchen. It was a kitchen from hundreds or thousands of years ago. The kitchen utensils and facilities were almost weathered, and the floor was full of trash and moldy skeletons. An armed man pushed open a manhole cover in the corner, revealing a sewer opening. "This is entrance 13. Let's go down." Daoshan led the way down the well. Below the well was a huge culvert. After walking along the culvert for dozens of meters, an armed man who led the way pushed open another sewer entrance. This time, the space changed. It was no longer a culvert, but a tunnel that extended underground. The tunnel was guarded by the resistance soldiers, and there were quite a few of them. However, with Daoshan leading the way, the passage was smooth. The tunnel was paved with stones, and it extended underground level by level. There were lights on the walls on both sides of the tunnel, and there were electric lights. Seeing the electric lights, Charlotte's anticipation for the underground city intensified. Humans moved from the surface to the underground and built a city. What would it be like? Chapter 1369. 1 kilometer down, the stone stairway suddenly stopped, and an underground canyon entered Charlotte's sight. The moment he saw it, he was completely shocked. The human city under the desolate city was built in this underground canyon. The cliff was filled with man-made caves, and there were buildings built by humans at the bottom of the canyon. Countless lights shone from the caves on the cliff and the buildings at the bottom of the canyon. Looking at it, the lights were like stars in the dark sky, impossible to count. There was a light rail in front of the canyon to connect the cave dwellers on both sides of the canyon. There was also a paved road at the bottom of the canyon, and there were vehicles driving on it. But they weren't private cars. There were trucks transporting ore, and there were armored vehicles of the resistance. This underground city wasn't big, but it gave people the impression that it was complete, and it seemed to have all the basic facilities. If the crust above their heads was like the night sky, this place would be a small mountain city, like a small version of Chongqing in China. This is the underground city. Daoshan pointed at the city under the cliff. His face was filled with pride. "Is it spectacular?" Charlotte nodded. "It is spectacular." "How long did it take to build this underground city?" 100 years. Daoshan said. It took 100 years to build this underground city. Although it was spectacular, how could people who hadn't experienced it understand the hardships and suffering? "Come with me." Daoshan walked to the side of the cliff. Charlotte and the other two followed Daoshan. There was an elevator on the side of the cliff. It was very simple, and it couldn't even be considered an elevator. After they stood on it, the elevator began to go down. There were only simple fences around it. Gu Kurson was afraid, so she tightly hugged onto Charlotte's leg. Before the elevator reached the bottom of the canyon, Daoshan used the communicator on the elevator and said, "Hurry," and asked the chief staff member to come out. "The person he wants to see the most is here." A woman's voice came from the communicator. "Colonel are you talking about that bitch from the logistics department? Tell her that the chief staff member is in a meeting and doesn't have time." "What did you say?" Daoshan looked embarrassed. "I said," before Daoshan could finish, the woman interrupted him. "Also, tell her not to use pregnancy as an excuse to pester the general staff department." Daoshan. Charlotte had a hard time holding back his laughter. Liang Tao was still the same Liang Tao. He had not changed at all. No matter where he was, he would always have a story with a woman, and it was a story that made people not know whether to laugh or cry. Mr. Xia, I'm sorry, but the one talking to me is Liang Zongshan's secretary, Hu Xiaoya. She must have made a mistake somewhere." Daoshan said. Charlotte smiled. "You don't have to explain. I understand." Daoshan's expression became even more awkward. Charlotte changed the topic. "Colonel is there any signal in the underground city?" Daoshan said, "Of course, but we can't contact the outside world. This is the communication base station that we built. The entire dungeon has signal coverage. The people of the Blue Moon Empire can't cut off our underground signal, so they don't dare to attack the underground city. Without spaceships and aircrafts, their combat power will be greatly reduced." Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself, the Blue Moon Empire has locked down the entire world, but they can't interfere with the underground city's communication signal. I wonder if my branding power... Just as he thought of this, the elevator suddenly stopped. The moment it stopped, the brand power in his body suddenly awakened, and all the power that he had lost returned. The branding power energy field was released, and all the thoughts of the people around him could be captured. He Daoshan thought to himself, this Charlotte looks so soft and tender. How is he a powerful killer? Liang Zongshan must have boasted too much. He even said that this Charlotte is more powerful than the Resistance Army's god of war. Is that possible? I won't believe it, even if you beat me to death. Beside Daoshan, Curtis was also thinking to himself, damn, who is this guy? That fool Daoshan is so polite to him, and he even wants to bring him to see Liang Zongshan personally. I don't care. This guy made me lose face. I must make him suffer. Hani Fei's brain worked. I want to relieve myself. I don't know where the toilet is. If it doesn't work, I'll just do it on the way. There are also the thoughts of the other Resistance Army soldiers. Everyone's brain had different thoughts. However, Charlotte didn't care about their thoughts. He had awakened the ability of his eyes. Wherever his gaze passed, there were no secrets to speak of. Even in a dark cave without lights, in front of him, it was like a gold coin exposed under the scorching sun, shining brightly. It was impossible not to see it, even if he didn't want to. He looked as he walked. He saw the running light rail and the people riding it. Some were miners, some were soldiers, some were doctors, and some were students. Their bodies always had characteristics that reflected their identity. He also saw the furniture in the cave. They were all very simple stone furniture. Beds, tables, chairs, and so on. From these stone furniture, it was not difficult to see that rock was the cheapest material here. However, they also showed a problem. Although it looked like a city, the conditions were still very difficult. Survival was worrying. In Peace Village, I learned that humans have been oppressed for thousands of years. Even literacy has become a luxury for them. But that should only happen in remote mountain villages. There are still students and teachers here who haven't stopped pursuing science and culture. This is a good thing. It seems that the situation of humans is a little better than I thought. Charlotte was guessing and feeling emotional. Under Daoshan's lead, Charlotte and the other two came to a building in the center of the canyon. This building was built with white rock. The architectural style was somewhat similar to the White House that Charlotte was familiar with. The White House had 2 floors, and this building also had 2 floors. The White House had the Oval Office, and this building also had the Oval Office. When Charlotte first saw it, he suddenly had a strange feeling. There was a red flag hanging on top of the white building. There was a big 5-pointed star on the red flag. 6 small 5-pointed stars surrounded the big 5-pointed star, forming a circle pattern of 7 5-pointed stars. To be honest, when Charlotte first saw the 5-pointed star pattern on the flag, he could not help but have an illusion that he had returned to his motherland. This is the Resistance Army's branch in the wasteland. We call it the White Office. Daoshan introduced it to Charlotte. Charlotte asked, "Who designed this flag?" Daoshan looked up at the red 7-pointed star flag on the white building. A strange look flashed in his eyes. That was designed by Holy Thunder. It's the Holy Star flag. Our Resistance Army uses the flag designed by Holy Thunder. Although Holy Thunder is no longer here, he is still our spiritual leader. Why would Holy Thunder design such a flag? Is there a story behind it? Charlotte asked curiously. Sorry, I don't know about that. Holy Thunder is a legendary figure. He is very mysterious. You won't believe it if I say it. He is our spiritual leader, but we don't even know his real name. Daoshan said. Charlotte looked up at the red 7-pointed star flag again. He didn't know why, but he had a strange feeling in his heart. However, he couldn't tell what it was. Ha ha ha. A man's laughter suddenly came from the white building. This was Liang Tao's voice. Even if this voice turned into ashes, Charlotte would still recognize it. Charlotte had actually seen Liang Tao long ago, but he was too lazy to pay attention to him. Brother, I knew you would come. See, I guessed right? Liang Tao walked out from the front hall, dressed in military uniform. He swept away the image of an immeasurably good uncle. His whole body was sculpted by the military uniform, and he actually had a bit of a soldier's dignified and straight spirit. However, Xiaolei knew that this was definitely a facade. There was a lascivious heart hidden under that military uniform. Regardless of Charlotte's reaction, Liang Tao came and directly gave Charlotte a bear hug. "My good brother, I miss you to death." Charlotte smiled and said, "Brother Liang, I missed you too. In less than a month, look at you, you've gained weight again." Liang Tao glared at Xiaolei. "What are you talking about? You should be talking about how handsome I am. This uncle's skin is really thick." Gu Kursin said. "Aya, who is this?" Liang Tao spoke very quickly, not giving Charlotte time to introduce. "Is she your daughter? My goodness, you actually hid it from me. I didn't expect your daughter to be so big." Charlotte smiled. "All right, she's not my daughter. Her name is Gu Kursin. She's a pitiful child. I'll leave her here this time, so I'll have to trouble you to take care of her." "You're leaving?" Liang Tao stared at Charlotte. Charlotte said, "I'll stay for 2 days." "All right, let me introduce you." He placed his hand on Han Yifei's shoulder. "This is Han Yifei. He's a biological scientist from the Heavenly Jewel Academy." "Ah," Liang Tao was taken aback. "A scientist from the Heavenly Jewel Academy," this Charlotte said. "This is not a good place to talk. Let's go to your office and talk." Right. "Mr. Han, please follow me." Liang Tao held Han Yifei's hand intimately. This was the first time he and Han Yifei had met, but the feeling he gave was that they were best friends since childhood. "Bootlicker," Gu Kursin muttered. Charlotte patted her little head. "Don't say that about Uncle Liang. He may have such a personality, but he's a good person. I want him to take care of you. In the future, you must be polite to him. Understand?" And Gu Kursin obediently nodded her head, then revealed a hesitant expression. She hesitated for a moment, then suddenly said to Xiaolei, "Daddy." Charlotte started. "Ah." Gu Kursin hugged Charlotte's thigh. "I don't want to call you Uncle Xia. You're my dad. From now on, you're my dad." Charlotte wanted to refuse, but the thought of refusing was very weak and was melted by Gu Kursin in an instant. He came to this world without any family. He had saved Gu Kursin from hell, and she was also alone. What was wrong with her wanting to acknowledge him as her dad? From then on, the two lonely people became family. "Dad?" Gu Kursin raised her head, looking at Charlotte. Charlotte smiled and patted Gu Kursin's head. "And my good daughter." A woman's voice suddenly sounded out. "Teacher Xia, congratulations. You even have a goddaughter so quickly, and such a beautiful and cute goddaughter." Charlotte looked in the direction of the voice, and a woman with skin like a black pearl came into his sight. Ramona from Peace Village. He didn't expect her to appear here. "Teacher Xia, come with me. Chief Consultant Liang and Mr. Han are already waiting for you." Ramona had a friendly smile on her face. She was also very happy to see Charlotte. "Okay, let's talk later," Charlotte said, and then entered the White House with his goddaughter. Chapter 1370. Ramona brought Charlotte to the Oval Office, and then she took Gu Kursin away. Liang Tao and Han Yifei had been chatting for a while, and the atmosphere between the two was very harmonious, giving off a feeling that they regretted not having met earlier. However, Charlotte knew that Liang Tao was a person who liked to be familiar with others, and no matter who he was with, they would feel that they regretted not having met earlier, especially women. "Brother, you've really done a great service." As soon as Charlotte entered, Liang Tao went straight to the point. "I've heard about your deeds from Mr. Han, but you don't know that you've not only saved Mr. Han, but all of us." "Brother Liang, you're too polite. Some things just happen to me. It's nothing much," Charlotte said. Liang Tao said, "You don't have to be so polite. I know about the existence of the AE project, and I also know how important it is to us humans. Professor Pangku is dead, and you've saved Mr. Han. This project will not stop, and we still have hope." Charlotte looked at Liang Tao. "You also know about the AE project? What do you know about it?" Liang Tao said, "Although our Resistance Army and the Heavenly Jewel Academy are different organizations, our goal is the same, to fight for the survival and future of humanity. Our Resistance Army and the Heavenly Jewel Academy interact in many areas. Sometimes when they need us to do something, they will ask. Similarly, when we need them to do something for us, we will ask directly. This is actually a kind of integration of resources. Only by combining all our strengths together can we have hope for survival and development. Charlotte smiled. That's not my problem. Liang Tao shrugged. All right, I'm actually not very clear about it, but our commander-in-chief is very clear. You should stay here for a while. When she comes, you can talk to her personally, and she will tell you everything. Then a wicked smile appeared on his face. Also, I have to tell you that she's the most beautiful woman in our resistance army. She's the flower of our resistance army. I can guarantee you that as long as you see her, you'll definitely be captivated by her. Charlotte said, No need. I'll leave here soon. I heard that you're going to the Dark Forest. Is that true? Liang Tao had obviously heard it from Hani Fei. Xiao Lei paused for a moment. Yes, I have something very important to deal with. I know that blue dragon. I heard that this is your agreement with it? Not entirely. I have my own reasons. Charlotte didn't want to explain. However, he understood Liang Tao's concern for him, because everyone had a common understanding, and that was that those who went to the Dark Forest would not come back alive. Liang Tao's eyes were filled with worry. I know that you are a person who keeps his promises, but this matter concerns your life and death. You should reconsider. Charlotte said, I've already made up my mind. I won't think about it anymore. Also, I'll leave this with you and Mr. Han for safekeeping. Charlotte opened his backpack and took out the black briefcase he got from the safe in Blackbeard's tent, and then placed it on Liang Tao's desk. What is this? Liang Tao asked curiously. Charlotte said, Professor Punk's scientific research materials and experimental records. I have no use for it, so I'll leave it to you and Mr. Han to deal with. Han Yifei excitedly grabbed the briefcase in his hand, his voice trembling as he said, This is Professor Pang Ku's briefcase. He always brings this briefcase to the laboratory to work. Liang Tao also seemed very excited. With Professor Punk's scientific research materials and experimental records, the possibility of us successfully researching AE will be greater. You guys take a look. I'll go out for a walk. Charlotte walked to the door. Do you need money? Liang Tao asked. Charlotte said, No, I found some Blue Moon coins in Blackbeard's safe. Can I use it here? Yes, Blue Moon coins can be used in any market on this planet, especially the black market. They only recognize Blue Moon coins and rare ores. Liang Tao said, That's good. Don't worry about me. You guys take a look at the materials and experimental records. I'll go out for a walk. Charlotte left Liang Tao's office. Come back early. I'll give you a welcome. Liang Tao's voice came from behind. Charlotte just smiled and didn't respond. He had actually seen the scientific research materials in the briefcase, but he didn't think Han Yifei could research E with those materials. On Earth, he had researched AE for several years, but in the end, he didn't have a reliable result. He had researched AE before, so he was very clear about the mystery and complexity of AE. How could it be easily researched with just some scientific research materials and experimental records? But the things in the briefcase were irresistible to Liang Tao and Han Yifei. If it weren't for the things in the briefcase, Liang Tao would have already caught up. In this underground city, no matter where Charlotte wanted to go, he would accompany him. Walking out of the White House, Charlotte walked along a street in the canyon. He didn't have a goal. He just walked wherever he wanted. The buildings on both sides of the street were relatively dense, but they weren't tall. The tallest one was only 3 stories high. The materials used in the buildings were mainly stone. They looked very sturdy and cumbersome. Using stone to build a house was definitely not as tall as using steel and cement to build a house. All he could see were houses made of stone, which reminded Xiao Lei of the Stone City. That city with magical energy that could travel through time and space and the stars. Where was it now? Just like this, walking around and thinking about random things, Charlotte unknowingly arrived at a market. The market wasn't big, but it sold everything. Guns, ammunition, protective equipment, daily necessities, ores, wild animals, and so on. It looked very lively. Friend, don't miss it. Come and see the latest assault rifle. How about it? A man selling guns walked out from behind his stall and promoted his goods to Charlotte. With my gun, you can do whatever you want outside. Getting rich is actually just the difference between having a gun and not having a gun. Charlotte just glanced at the weapons in the weapons vendor's stall, then shook his head and walked away. Those weapons were all rusty junk weapons. It was hard to say if they could even fire, let alone have any accuracy. Bah, poor bastard. The weapons vendor spat on the ground. F***CK. You must be a poor bastard who snuck in from the outside. Don't let me see you again, or I'll kill you. Xiaolei actually heard the weapons dealer's curses and threats clearly, but he didn't have the heart to care about it. In this chaotic world, life was as cheap as grass, let alone dignity. If he argued with people everywhere and wanted to win or lose, most of the people here would probably die. The harsh living environment made people irritable, vicious, and selfish. These were actually human nature, and humans were just a type of animal. Eating what they could eat to maintain their own survival was actually a common trait among all animals. Humans were no exception. Friend, why don't you go in and take a look? A vendor blocked Charlotte's way. The vendor was dressed in decent clothes, and there was a Blue Moon person's energy pistol on his belt. It was the same model as the one he had gotten from Blackbeard's safe. However, the handle of the vendor's energy pistol was inlaid with a red gem the size of a thumb. As a weapon, it was far less obvious that it was meant to be flaunted. Xiaolei's line of sight shifted to the building behind the peddler. It was a 3-story stone building. The door of the shop on the ground floor was tightly shut, and there was a billboard hanging on the door. On it was written in Chinese, "Treasure Snatching Shop." Treasure Snatching Shop? Perhaps the name had piqued Charlotte's curiosity. His eyes moved slightly, and the metal door instantly melted in his sight like snow. The space behind the door entered his sight, and he saw a rather wide hall. There was a booth in the middle of the hall, and there were more than 10 girls standing on the booth. They only had a pitiful amount of cloth to cover their private parts, and there were many scars on their exposed skin. Those were the marks of being beaten and whipped. The goods in the hall surprised Charlotte. It was acceptable to sell weapons and wild animals, but it was hard to accept that they were selling women as goods, and they were openly selling them in the market. Even on Earth, this kind of thing only happened in slave societies and feudal societies, right? Friend, go in and take a look. You only need to pay 5 Blue Moon dollars. The corner of the vendor's mouth had a tempting smile. Even if you can't afford it, it's not a bad idea to go in and take a look. Very soon, they will take off their clothes for display. Charlotte retracted his gaze. Is there no one to stop you from carrying out the trade of female slaves here? Stop? Are you talking about the resistance army? The corner of the merchant's mouth curled into a disdainful smile. This underground city was not built by the resistance army, and they're not the owner of this underground city. Charlotte probed. Then who is the owner of this underground city? The merchant frowned. My answer is not free. Do you want to go in or not? Charlotte smiled. Go in. Of course, I want to go in and take a look. He took out a roll of Blue Moon dollars from his trouser pocket and took out the smallest denomination, but it was still a denomination of 20. Before Charlotte handed the Blue Moon dollar to the merchant grabbed the Blue Moon dollar from Charlotte's hand. My eyes have never been bad. I can tell that you are a rich man at a glance. Thank you for the tip. Please come in. Charlotte didn't let him keep the change. He walked to the door that led to the hall and pushed the door open. There were already a lot of people in the hall, and most of them were men. They looked at the girls on the stage with lustful eyes. They weren't old, and the oldest was probably less than 18 years old. They stood on the stage timidly, nervously waiting for their unknown fate. After Charlotte entered the hall, the merchant waved his hand. A young man walked to his side. The merchant whispered something into the young man's ear, and the young man nodded and walked to the elevator that led out of the underground city. The well-dressed merchant looked at the metal door of the hall that was once again closed, and a strange smile appeared on his face. Chapter 1371. Hey, little girl, raise your leg and let me see your little treasure. A ferocious-looking man was standing in front of the booth, talking to a young girl who looked very pretty. His eyes were greedily staring at the girl's thighs and the pitifully small amount of cloth between her legs. These girls who were waiting to be sold actually had a pitifully small amount of cloth covering their private parts. Furthermore, they were all white gauze, so covering them was equivalent to not covering them at all. However, it was this kind of half-covering and half-revealing temptation that could arouse a man's desire the most. Even so, there were still people who were not satisfied and wanted to tear off the last bit of dignity and cloth covering their private parts. Of course, the girl refused to raise her leg so that the fierce-looking man could see her private parts. She lowered her head and avoided everyone's gaze. "Damn it. Wait until I buy you. Then you'll know how powerful I am," the fierce-looking man said fiercely. He did not hide the lust and violence in his eyes. If that girl was bought by him, her fate could be imagined. Xia Lei felt a sense of helplessness as he looked at the pitiful young girls on the display stand. He really wanted to help them, but there were too many people in this world who needed his help. Could he help them all? There was also anger. The people in this world had lost their humanity, and the ugliness of human nature could be seen everywhere. The Blue Moon people treated the humans in this world as food, but they were still fighting and killing each other. The well-dressed merchant walked in again and came to Charlotte's side with a kind smile on his face. "My friend, which one have you taken a fancy to? Since you're so generous, I'll give you a discount." Charlotte only glanced at him and did not say anything. My friend, don't be embarrassed. Did you take a fancy to all of them? Why don't you buy them all?" The well-dressed merchant said with a smile. They were all caught in the village at the edge of the dark forest. They are all original goods that no one has touched before. 1,000 Blue Moon coins each. There are 8 of them here. I'll give you a discount, 7,000 Blue Moon coins. For 7,000 Blue Moon coins, you can hug them to sleep tonight and do whatever you want. Charlotte said indifferently, "Sorry, I'm not interested in women." The well-dressed businessman said, "Then you are interested in men. We also have men here, strong men, good-looking men, all kinds of men." Charlotte was no longer interested in talking to him. The well-dressed merchant continued to pester him. "My friend, there's no need to hide. When I came in just now, I saw you staring at that woman's chest. Do you like women with big breasts? They haven't fully developed yet. Believe me, as long as you give them some time, their breasts will develop. You definitely won't be able to hold one with one hand. That's enough." Xia Lei's voice was tinged with anger. "Songji, sell that girl to me." The ferocious-looking man walked over and said, "I bid 500 Blue Moon dollars. Damn it, you're lucky. That chick makes me burn with lust. I can't wait to press her down and vent it out." Songji was the merchant's name. "Big rat, you bastard. My goods are worth more than 500 Blue Moon dollars." Songji said, "However, if you're willing to *CK the girl in front of everyone, I can sell her to you. There's a price to pay for livening up the atmosphere. I'm always willing to make concessions for my customers. As long as you're happy, anything is fine." "Ha ha ha. Sure, I'll *CK her right here." The man called Big Rat pointed at the girl in front of him and said, "It's her. Deal." "I only accept cash," Songji said. "Damn it. Are you looking down on me? Let me tell you, I have plenty of money." Big Rat took out a roll of Blue Moon dollars from his trouser pocket. The coins were still stained with blood. Xia Lei's power of branding was unleashed in an instant, enveloping the giant rat in a silent embrace. At that moment, Charlotte's brain constructed a picture based on the information he stole from the energy. That money was stolen by Big Rat. For the money in his hands, he killed a couple and a child. "Here are 500 Blue Moon dollars. Here you go." Big Rat handed the blood-stained Blue Moon dollars to Songji. Songji reached out and grabbed the Blue Moon dollars. The girl that Big Rat had his eyes on was trembling, her face completely pale. Her eyes were filled with fear and tears, but what awaited her was not help. Instead, it was pairs of people who were waiting to watch a live performance. "Wait." Charlotte held Songji's hand and said, "Sell them to me at the price you just mentioned. 7,000 Blue Moon dollars?" Songji's lips curled into a sly smile. Charlotte nodded and said, 7,000 Blue Moon dollars. "Are you selling?" Of course. Deal. Song Ji held Charlotte's hand. Damn it, Song Ji. You and I have already discussed the price. Are you going back on your word? Big Rat became angry from embarrassment and scolded. Song Ji's face suddenly turned gloomy. Big Rat, this is my territory. You better be polite. My rule here is that the highest bidder wins. If you offer a higher price, I'll sell them to you immediately. Damn it, you're simply robbing a burning house. Big Rat scolded again. Song Ji said coldly, this is the last time I'm warning you. You should know the consequences of provoking me here. At that moment, two young men walked out from a corner of the exhibition hall with weapons in their hands. Big Rat said, all right, I won't provoke you. He looked at Charlotte and said fiercely, but you're dead meat. When we get out, I'll kill you immediately. You can kill as you please here? Xiaolei blurted out. Of course, Song Ji said with a smile. I also provide bodyguard services here. As long as you pay, my people can protect you and your girls and leave this place safely. No need. Charlotte waved at Big Rat and said, come here. I want to talk to you. F***CK your mother. Big Rat was extremely arrogant. Don't think that money can help you solve the problem this time. I've decided. As soon as you get out of here, I'll kill you immediately. Your money and your women are all mine. Charlotte just smiled and didn't react. Just as Xiaolei smiled, the rat suddenly swung a slap at Song Ji and cursed, fuck you, you motherfucker. Do you really think you're the king here? You're just a poor idiot. Everyone's eyes were focused on Song Ji. Song Ji covered the half of his face that was slapped and was a little stunned. Big Rat pointed at Song Ji's nose and scolded. What are you looking at? Look at your mother. So what if I hit you? What do you dare to do to me? I'll go to your mother's bed tonight. Song Ji's face first turned red, then blue, then white, and finally red again. What's wrong with Big Rat today? Is he stupid? Someone whispered. He must have eaten too much happy powder. Song Ji is a character that can't be messed with in this underground city. He actually insulted Song Ji like this. Someone said, feeling very surprised. I heard that he's an important member of the Black Market Alliance. Even the Resistance Army doesn't want to touch him. Big Rat actually dared to insult him like this. I don't know what will happen next, someone said. Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself, what kind of organization is the Black Market Alliance? It sounded like it had a lot of power. Lascivious Cat is also a businessman who specializes in inhumane transactions. He's the same as Song Ji. I wonder if Lascivious Cat is also a member of the Black Market Alliance? Inexplicably entering the slave auction shop and gaining such confidence was actually a gain for Charlotte. He knew a little more about this world. In the midst of whispers and discussions, Song Ji suddenly pulled out the Blue Moon People's energy pistol from his waist. The muzzle was instantly aimed at Big Rat's chest. At that moment, Big Rat seemed to wake up. He suddenly said nervously, no, it's not me. Boom! A muffled gunshot rang out. A white energy bullet instantly hit Big Rat's chest. Crash! The moment Big Rat was shot, his body exploded, turning into a pile of minced meat. Not a single complete organ could be found. This scene shocked Charlotte. This was because although he had obtained a Blue Moon People's energy pistol from Blackbeard, he had never used it until now. Subconsciously, he was actually more willing to use the guns of humans than the Blue Moon People's weapons. But now his concept had changed. The power of an energy pistol was so great. Then what did the Blue Moon People's heavy weapons mean? No wonder the humans were defeated. Damn, no one can scold me like this. I already gave you the best chance. You must be F***king crazy. Song Ji spat on the minced meat on the ground. His anger hadn't subsided yet. Big Rat wasn't crazy. The one who made him crazy was Charlotte. In a short time before Song Ji fired, Big Rat's brain was no longer under his control. The person controlling his brain was of course Charlotte. Not to mention scolding Song Ji. Even if he wanted to push Song Ji to the ground and do that kind of thing in front of everyone, he would do it casually. In the underground city, Song Ji wasn't a king. The one who controlled everything was Charlotte. Away from Blue Moon's energy field seal, Charlotte's imprint power had awakened. He was the invisible king of the underground world. Sorry, my friend. This guy must have made you feel uncomfortable. As compensation, I'll invite you to go up and see something more advanced. How about it? Songji said. Something more advanced? Charlotte just casually asked. He wasn't interested. Come with me. I promise you won't be disappointed. Songji suddenly came over and lowered his voice. Let me tell you, I got the best stuff from the dark forest. Xiaolei subconsciously raised his head to look. His gaze pierced through the floorboards. Chapter 1372. It was a dark space upstairs, and there were no lights on. Charlotte saw some wooden furniture and a metal cage. There seemed to be a person in the cage, but he couldn't see the person's face clearly because his vision had gone through the stone floor. My friend, come with me. Songji walked toward the staircase. Charlotte hesitated for a while, then followed Songji to the staircase. Just now, he thought that it was some kind of rare animal from the dark forest, but it looked like a human. In terms of body size, the person in the metal cage looked like a woman. His curiosity was piqued, and he wanted to see what was going on. In the underground city, his ability had returned. Other than opponents like Isitabu and Kasha Ruiz, he didn't have to worry about Songji's tricks. In fact, he didn't think much of Songji. Just as Charlotte walked towards the staircase, a girl on the platform suddenly jumped down from the platform and said loudly, Master, you haven't paid yet. The girl who jumped down from a platform was the beautiful girl that Big Rat had his eyes on. The only flaw was that her body hadn't fully developed, and she still looked a little immature. She jumped down from the platform and chased after him for a few steps, but she didn't dare to catch up. She looked very nervous. The other 7 girls on the booth were also looking at Xia Lei eagerly, as if they wanted him to pay up. It wasn't strange for them to have such expectations. Compared to a man like Big Rat, they obviously hoped that Charlotte would be their master. Compared to a buyer like Big Rat, these girls obviously hoped that a person like Charlotte would be their master. This didn't have much to do with Charlotte's good looks, but it was because he looked like a good person. Not only was he good-looking, but he also didn't look like a fierce person. This was very important to them. Songji stopped and looked back at Charlotte. He laughed and said, My friend, look, your girl can't bear to leave you so quickly. I've never had a female slave remind a master to pay for her. You're the first. Your luck with women is so good that it's enviable. Charlotte took out 7,000 Blue Moon coins and handed them to Songji. Boss Song, please wait for me. I'll come over after I have a few words with them. Songji smiled. Of course, my friend. They are already yours. You can do whatever you want to them. After Charlotte paid, the girls on the stage jumped down from booth and walked toward Charlotte. Follow me. Charlotte walked to an empty corner of the exhibition hall. The 8 girls followed Charlotte to the corner. They stood upright with their hands at their sides, nervously yet meekly looking at Charlotte. To them, the man in front of them was already their new master. Their destiny seemed to have ushered in a ray of light. Of course, they couldn't help but be excited and nervous. But just when the 8 girls thought that Charlotte was going to give them an order, Charlotte said to them, You're free. You can go. The 8 girls looked at Charlotte in shock. They couldn't believe that this was the first sentence Charlotte said to them. Before Charlotte spoke, they thought that Charlotte brought them to this empty corner to let them show their bodies and satisfy his lustful desire. They would refuse a man like Big Mouse, but they wouldn't refuse a man like Charlotte. But they didn't expect that Charlotte would let them go and give them freedom. Why are you looking at me like that? You didn't hear me wrong. I'm telling the truth. You can go. You're free now. Charlotte said with a faint smile on his face. He didn't have the slightest arrogance of an overbearing master. But the more amiable he was, the more the 8 girls didn't want to leave him. Become free? The 8 girls knew very well what they would face if they left Charlotte. They would encounter people who wanted to capture them again and turn them into female slaves. They would be bullied, and they might even become food for the Blue Moon people. Freedom was also built on strength. If they didn't even have the strength to protect themselves in this chaotic world, what kind of freedom was that? For a moment, the 8 girls were silent. Their faces were filled with anxiety and nervousness. Xiaolei took out a few more Blue Moon coins and stuffed them into the hands of the pretty girl. This money is for you. Use it to buy some food and weapons on the way. Master, did we do something wrong? If we did, you can whip us. Please don't chase us away, the beautiful girl said pitifully. This has nothing to do with you. Okay, I'm leaving. You should go too. Leave this place as soon as possible. After saying this, Charlotte walked toward the staircase. The 8 girls didn't leave. Instead, they looked at his back. They were waiting for Charlotte to turn around and tell them that he had changed his mind, but Charlotte didn't even turn around. For Charlotte, he had no other choice. Goo Curson alone was enough to give him a headache. If he added these 8 girls, he could forget about exploring the Forest of Rest again. After entering the staircase, Song Ji said, My friend, if you don't want them, why did you buy them? 7,000 Blue Moon coins isn't a small amount. Charlotte said, Boss Song, I've already paid for them. They are mine. I could do whatever I want, right? He. Of course, just pretend I didn't ask anything. Song Ji said. As he spoke, he subconsciously looked at the watch on his wrist. It was an antique watch with a mechanical case. The watch was made of gold, and the dial was inlaid with a diamond. It looked very precious. Boss Song, your watch isn't bad. Are you willing to sell it? Charlotte said. Song Ji looked at Charlotte and then said with a smile, My friend, it's very expensive. I don't think you can afford it. Charlotte said, Then your watch or the top quality goods you brought me to see, which one is more expensive? Song Ji was slightly stunned. He realized that Charlotte didn't just casually ask how much his watch was worth. Instead, he was using his watch to test him. However, after being stunned for a moment, Song Ji instantly returned to normal. His face still had that kind smile. My friend, of course my watch is more expensive. It's an antique watch from 1,000 years ago. You know, antiques are very valuable no matter what era they are in. Charlotte nodded his head. You're right. They represent the past and the stories of that era. These things can't be recovered, so they're very precious. Then he smiled and said, Well, let's not talk about your watch. Take me to see your top quality goods. A strange smile appeared on the corner of Song Ji's mouth, but he didn't continue to talk about his watch. He took Charlotte to the 2nd floor. When they walked out the staircase, he reached out and pressed the switch on the wall. The lights on the 2nd floor suddenly turned on. Under the illumination of the light, what entered Charlotte's field of vision was an extremely luxurious room. There was a lot of wooden furniture in the room, which was also painted red. It looked red and magnificent. Many of the decorations in the room were also antiques. There was an old record player, as well as works of art such as oil paintings. They all looked very valuable. However, Charlotte just glanced at these things. His eyes quickly moved to the metal cage. There was a woman in the metal cage, a very special woman. Her skin was blue, but it wasn't pure blue. There were black stripes. Those stripes were distributed on her skin all over her body. Her blue skin, coupled with the black stripes, made her look like a human zebra. In addition to her skin color, her ears were long and pointed, just like the ears of elves. Her hair was also a mix of blue and black. It was very long, dragging from her shoulders to her blue and black striped buttocks that were exposed to the air. In addition to her skin color, hair, and ears, she was exactly the same as a human woman. She had a full and firm chest and strong and slender legs. She curled up in a metal cage, one hand covering her chest and the other hand on the gap between her legs, covering another characteristic of a woman. When the light in the room turned on, she subconsciously raised her hand to cover her eyes. After adapting to the light, her eyes moved to Song Ji and Charlotte. Her eyes were also a mix of blue and black, big and bright. However, at this time, her eyes were full of vigilance and anger. When their eyes met, Charlotte saw her face clearly. It was a delicate and beautiful face, plump and curled lips, and a straight nose. All of these gave people a sexy and pleasing feeling. However, the blue and black striped face made people feel strange. Other than that, she was probably the sexiest and most beautiful woman that Charlotte had seen since he came to this world. Who is she? Charlotte walked toward the metal cage. The blue woman did not retreat. She looked straight at Charlotte with a strange expression. My friend. Songji also came to the side of the metal cage. Tell me first, have you seen a woman like this? Charlotte shook his head. No. He. Songji laughed. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. I'll tell you the truth. This is actually the first time I've seen a native from the dark forest, an Akimis. Akimis? It was Charlotte's first time hearing that. The Akimis, the natives of this planet. In the Holy Thunder era, scholars called the Akimis rock spirits, Songji said. However, I don't believe in elves. My friend, do you believe that she's an elf? Charlotte shifted his gaze to the woman in the metal cage again. He was sure that what he saw was not an elf, but a living woman. A certain scholar in the Holy Thunder Age might have named the Akimis rock elves based on some descriptions of elves, such as their long and pointy ears. My friend, what do you think of her? The corners of Songji's mouth carried a faint smile. Charlotte smiled. Not bad, I like such rare goods. How much is it? Chapter 1373. Songji didn't mention how much it was. Instead, he asked Charlotte, My friend, how much do you think she's worth? Charlotte said, She's yours, not mine. Songji smiled and said, Don't be anxious, my friend. Wait for me here. I'll go upstairs for a while. There's still a few VIPs upstairs. I'll invite them down. Later, whoever offers the highest price will take her away. No problem. Charlotte watched Songji leave. When Songji entered the staircase again, he looked up at the stone floor above his head. The instant his gaze penetrated the stone floor, a lewd and chaotic scene entered his vision. A few men and a large group of women were having sex. The bed, the floor, and the corners were filled with indulgent men and women. There were also delicacies, fresh fruits, and red wine. Soon, Charlotte's gaze shifted to a tray. There was a newborn baby on it, and it was obvious that she had been steamed. A feeling of nausea suddenly emerged. Charlotte retched and almost vomited. A ball of fury rose in Charlotte's heart as he thought to himself, This Songji dares to do anything for money. He's inhumane. The Resistance Army is also in this underground city. Why are they allowing people like Songji to exist? Isn't the mission of the Resistance Army to save humanity? If they don't even care about scum like Songji, how can the Resistance Army unite more people? Since ancient times, the one who won the hearts of the people would win the world. Regardless of the era, whoever gained the support of the people would be able to rewrite history. However, the Resistance Army was stationed in this underground city, yet they allowed the slave trade in the underground city. They even ate babies. How could the Resistance Army gain the support of the people? If they didn't have the support of the people, they were just an armed organization. Before coming to this underground city, Charlotte was filled with respect for the Resistance Army. However, after seeing and hearing everything in this underground city, he started to doubt the Resistance Army. The respect and good impression he had was also disappearing. Just then, the Ahimis woman in the metal cage, also known as the Rock Sprite, spoke. Kill them and take me out of here. I can give you a spirit or as a reward. Charlotte's thoughts were suddenly pulled back, and his heart skipped a beat. You can speak Chinese? The woman's expression was very calm. What's the big deal about Chinese? I know all the languages in this world. Charlotte said in surprise. How is this possible? Are you willing to trade with me? The woman pulled the topic back. I'll give you a high-quality spirit, Charlotte said. What makes you think that I will save you? The woman replied, Yes, I knew you would when I first saw you. The intuition of us Archimeans is never wrong. Charlotte was amused. He smiled and said, This place is full of Songji's men. They all have weapons and are killers who kill without blinking an eye. Do you think I have the ability to save you? As long as you want, you can. The woman said. Her eyes were as deep and mysterious as the blue ocean, as if they could see through everything, including one's soul. Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? I don't understand. The woman lowered her voice. I know your secret. Charlotte was stunned. What do you know? However, the woman shut her mouth. Charlotte approached the metal cage, and the branding energy field on his body instantly covered the entire cage. However, He didn't catch anything. The woman in the cage definitely had thoughts, and her brain waves were definitely around her, but he still couldn't catch anything. It gave him the feeling that the woman in the cage wasn't a living Ahemus woman, nor was it a rock sprite, but a three-dimensional image projected by a projector. This is your secret. I know you'll do this, but it's useless against me unless I want it to, the Ahemus woman said. Charlotte suppressed the shock and surprise in his heart. What's going on? The Ahemus said. The Creator will give advantages to every species he creates, and at the same time, he will give disadvantages to that species. This is the Creator's law of balance, and everything in the universe is within this law. You asked me the reason, and this is the reason. Of course, Charlotte wasn't satisfied with such a vague answer. He probed, Is every Ahemus like you? The Ahemus woman nodded. You live in the forest of rest. The Ahemus woman nodded again. How did you get caught by Songji? The Ahemus woman said, I forgot the teachings of my clansmen. I walked out of the forest of rest, and then I encountered armed men who were massacring a human village. They were all Songji's people, so I got caught. Charlotte asked again, Tell me, is there a blue energy tree in the forest of rest? Where exactly is it in the forest of rest? The Ahemus woman closed her mouth, no longer answering Charlotte's question. All right, I can get you out, but you have to promise to take me to that blue energy tree. Charlotte said. The Ahemus was silent for a moment, then said, That's not an energy tree. That's the mother of the world. I can't take you to it, but I'm willing to help you. Can't find it? What do you mean? You should be very familiar with the forest of rest. Charlotte said. The Ahemus woman said, You don't understand the mother of the world at all. It can't be found unless it appears and summons you. If the mother of the world wants to see you, you will naturally see it. If it doesn't want to see you, even if you search the forest of rest for 10,000 years, you won't be able to find it. Charlotte suddenly understood. No wonder there was very little information about the blue energy tree in Sunflower's brain, and it had only appeared once in the canyon at the center of the forest of rest. Previously, he was wondering why Sunflower's brain had so little memory of the energy tree, and now he knew the reason. Sunflower had only seen the energy tree once, and it was when she was summoned with her own kind. After that, she hadn't seen the energy tree again, so of course she didn't have many memories of the energy tree. Deal. Charlotte made his decision. The Ahemus woman's face revealed a trace of a smile. Deal. My name is Longier. Charlotte. Charlotte said his name. Longi said, They're here. Be careful of Songji's energy gun. I was caught because of that energy gun. Charlotte shifted his gaze in the direction of the staircase. At that moment, Songji brought a few men back from target practice into this luxurious room. My friend, it seems like you had a good chat with the rock sprite. Songji said with a smile. But if you want to take her away from here, you'll have to prepare enough money. Charlotte smiled. Any problem that can be solved with money is not a problem for me. Name your price. Songji said. I made it very clear just now. The rock sprite in the cage belongs to whoever offers the highest price. My friend, how much do you think she's worth? Charlotte smiled. He had never thought of buying any women with money from the beginning. Songji also smiled. My friend, your smile is worthless. If you want to take her away, you'll have to have money, a lot of money. At this time, a fat man sneered. Boss Song, I thought we were competing with a big shot. I didn't expect it to be a new face, and such a young boy. How much money can he have? I'll pay 200,000 Blue Moon dollars, and this rock sprite is mine. Another thin and tall man in bright clothes said in a gloomy voice, I'll pay 300,000 Blue Moon dollars. I heard that the Dark Forest rock sprite is very nutritious. I played with it for a month and steamed it to eat. Haha, 300,000 Blue Moon dollars for steamed meat? You're really something, old G, but she's mine. A short man with a height of less than 1.5 meters said with a big tone. You know who I am. Don't fight with me. I'll pay 310,000 Blue Moon dollars, and this rock sprite is mine. Shorty, who doesn't know that the boss behind you is Lascivious Cat. Don't use his old man to pressure people. 310,000. If Boss Song agrees, she's yours. I won't fight with you. However, you have to say a few good words in front of lascivious cat. The thin and tall man called Old G changed his words. Lascivious cat. Just hearing his name, these man-eating fellows were willing to make concessions. It could be seen how high lascivious cat's reputation was and how much these people were afraid of him. Song Ji pretended to sigh. Shorty, are you the one who's buying it or the perverted cat? You and I both know how high the price of a rock sprite is on the black market. This one I got is of the best quality. It's worth at least 500,000 Blue Moon dollars. You want to take it away for 310,000. Boss Song, this is what you said. Whoever bids the highest, the rock sprite in the cage will belong to him. The short man sneered. No one is bidding now. I offered the highest price. Of course, she's mine. Song Ji's eyes moved to Charlotte. My friend, if you don't bid, you won't have a share. This short man will take this rock sprite away. If she falls into the hands of lascivious cat, she will receive customers every day and will eventually be eaten. Do you want her to be like that? Charlotte still didn't say anything. Longer in the cage suddenly said, What are you waiting for? Her words sounded like she was urging Charlotte to bid and then follow him. But Charlotte knew that she was urging him to kill. Charlotte glanced at Longer with a faint smile on his mouth. Since you know my secret, why are you in such a hurry? I have my plan. Longer said, Okay, I'll wait for you. But if you lie to me, you'll never see it. Don't worry, I never lied to a woman. Charlotte said. The two of them spoke as if nothing had happened. They didn't put a few men who thought they were very powerful in their eyes. This kind of disregard was difficult for ordinary people to accept, let alone people in the same room. Damn, who the hell are you? The fat man spoke rudely. The short man walked in front of Charlotte and looked up at Charlotte. I'll give you a chance now. Immediately kneel down and clean my shoes with your tongue. Then I'll consider letting you go. After that, he bowed his head and spat on one of his shoes. Chapter 1374. Thick phlegm, an arrogant shorty, and a few pairs of gloating eyes waiting to watch a good show. In this room, apart from Longer in the cage, no one paid any attention to Xiaolei, and no one took him seriously. Charlotte didn't move, nor did he react angrily. Damn, didn't you hear what I said? I told you to kneel down and clean my shoes with your tongue. The shorty roared at Charlotte. If it wasn't because he was being hit, he would have slapped Charlotte. If he wanted to slap Charlotte's face now, he would probably have to jump up, and he obviously wouldn't do something that would expose his own flaws. Charlotte still didn't move. He didn't even look at the shorty. He looked at a wall as if he was waiting for something. Shorty, this kid doesn't seem to put you in his eyes. The tall and skinny man mocked. Come, the shorty roared. Footsteps came from the stairwell, and in the blink of an eye, 4 dark and tough men came in. The shorty pointed at Charlotte and said, Catch him, chop him up, and feed him to the horned pigs. The 4 dark and tough men didn't hesitate and walked toward Charlotte together. They all had guns on them, but they didn't pull them out. In their opinion, they didn't need to use guns to deal with a kid like Charlotte. Song Ji said, My friend, if you don't bid, I can't help you. Charlotte retracted his gaze from the wall. Okay, I bid 100 million Blue Moon dollars. Everyone in the room was stunned. 100 million Blue Moon dollars was definitely an astronomical number in this chaotic world. It was even an astronomical number on the Blue Moon. The young man in front of them bid 100 million right off the bat. Did he have that much money? Is there more than 100 million? Charlotte said faintly, If not, the rock sprite in the cage is mine. Lan Ji smiled. Where did you get so much money? Song Ji came back to his senses. That's right, my friend. This is no joke. Where did you get so much money? Charlotte said, Of course I don't have that much money. I'll owe it to you first and give it to you later. Song Ji's face immediately darkened. Ha! The fatty laughed so hard that his whole body was trembling. Boss Song, you helped him out of kindness, but he obviously didn't take you seriously. Even a fool can see that he's not bidding. He's just messing with you. The skinny man added fuel to the fire. Boss Song, is he treating you like a fool? Song Ji said coldly, Take him away, but I want to kill him personally. I'll give you face. The shorty waved his hand. What are you waiting for? Arrest him. As soon as the shorty finished speaking, Charlotte suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed the shorty's neck. Then he violently twisted, crack. The sound of bones breaking suddenly came out from the shorty's neck. His head also hung down like a sugar cane that had been twisted. But this wasn't the end. Charlotte fiercely twisted his body again. After exerting force, he actually broke his lumbar vertebrae, making him break in half. After folding, the shorty's mouth happened to touch the shoe that he had spat on. "You better take care of your own shoe," Charlotte said, and then threw the shorty's body on the ground. It wasn't until this time that the people in the room came back to their senses. They were stunned because they couldn't believe that such a thing would happen. A young man who came out of nowhere killed lascivious cats, important subordinate, in front of them. Moreover, his killing method was so cruel and horrible. "Kill him," Song Ji roared. For black and hard men suddenly pulled out their guns. Their action of pulling out their guns was very fast and accurate. The subsequent shooting was also fast and accurate, without the slightest feeling of sloppiness. Bang, bang, bang. Gunshots rang out. The tall and thin man and the fat man fell into a pool of blood. Their eyes and mouths were wide open. Even in death, they couldn't believe that such a thing would happen. But still happened. It was unbelievable, and no one knew the reason. Bang, bang, bang. A few more gunshots rang out, and the four black and hard men also fell into a pool of blood. They killed the tall and thin man, and then committed suicide by swallowing their guns. This series of actions were completed smoothly. Even if they were to shoot their own heads, they wouldn't hesitate. In the blink of an eye, only Song Ji, Charlotte, and Lanja were left in the room. The smell of blood filled the air, but the fog was even thicker. Song Ji subconsciously retreated to the staircase. His voice trembled as he spoke. You, who are you?" Charlotte had a smile on his face. "Don't you want to catch me? You sent someone to inform me. How could you not know who I am?" "You, how did you know?" Song Ji's voice trembled even more. Charlotte had stolen the information from the big rat's brain. How could he let Song Ji go? Not only did he know that Song Ji had sent someone to inform him when he walked into the exhibition hall on the first floor, he also knew some of Song Ji's unspeakable deeds. According to his standards, it wouldn't be too much to kill Song Ji 10 times over for all the evil deeds he had done that angered both humans and gods. Song Ji was Blackbeard's man. This was Song Ji's secret. Even Shorty didn't know. Charlotte already knew it when he was in the hall on the first floor. He was willing to follow Song Ji to this room on the second floor to see the female slave. Part of the reason was because of Blackbeard. Song Ji was waiting for Blackbeard to come. He was also waiting for Blackbeard. If Blackbeard really came with his men, he wouldn't hesitate to kill Blackbeard here. He just didn't expect the female slave on the second floor to be an Ahemus woman, a rock sprite from the dark forest. "You have the portrait of me that Blackbeard gave you. Although it's ugly, you can still recognize me." "But Blackbeard has never seen me before. Where did the portrait come from?" This was Charlotte's first question. He had seen Blackbeard before, but Blackbeard had never seen him. "So where did the portrait come from?" "I don't know. I do have a portrait of you. Blackbeard told me that if I saw the person in the portrait, I had to inform him. I did it. I had to do it. Otherwise, he would kill me." Song Ji looked very nervous. Song Ji's brain didn't have any information about the portrait, but Charlotte could roughly guess. On the night of the attack on Blackbeard's lair, only the 4 children had seen his face. He took Gu Kurson with him, but the other 3 escaped by themselves. Now it seemed that the 3 children's escape plan that night had failed. They had already fallen into Blackbeard's hands. The 3 children might still be alive, or they might have already become food for the Blue Moon Woman. That was their own choice, and no one could blame them. "When is Blackbeard coming?" Charlotte asked. I don't know. I just followed his orders. As for what he would do, I don't know." Song Ji said. "If you don't know anything, then what's the point of keeping you alive?" Charlotte's lips curled into a cold smile. No. Don't kill me. I can give you money. You can have as much as you want. I can even betray Blackbeard for you and work for you from now on. I'm good at making money. I'll make a lot of money for you." As he spoke, Song-ji's hand quietly reached behind his waist. At this moment, footsteps suddenly came from the corridor. Hearing the footsteps, Song-ji had a slightly relaxed reaction. His underlings had arrived. Charlotte shook his head. People are always willing to believe that they still have a chance. If they take a gamble, they will win. But what I want to tell you is that with me, you have no chance at all. I know what you did. You brought your men to attack that village. The 8 girls you sold to me were stolen from that village. You massacred that village. You even raped one of the girls' mother in front of her and then killed her mother. Based on what you did, I can kill you 10 times over. I will give justice to those villagers and the 8 children. So, your death will be more painful. The process will not be fast. I'm telling you this in hopes that you will have the right mental preparation. He did not say this to make people mentally prepare. It was just to make the person he was about to kill more afraid and more painful. Go to hell, Song-ji roared. The right arm that he had secretly reached behind his back suddenly swung out. The energy pistol in his hand moved toward Charlotte. At that moment, a cold light suddenly flew out from Charlotte's hand. It flashed in the air and stopped on his right wrist. Only when he felt a sharp pain did he realize that it was a military knife. The short man, the fat man, and the tall and skinny man all died very easily. Even the 4 black and tough armed bodyguards died very easily. It was only with Song-ji that Xia Lei did not use such a method of killing and did it himself. However, this was not for any other reason. He just wanted Song-ji to die in more pain. A few armed men rushed out from the staircase. Boom! A white energy bullet shot out from the energy pistol in Xia Lei's hands, and before the armed personnel could lock onto his position, the energy bullet had already exploded on one of their bodies. Whoosh! With a tremor, the armed men were blown into a pile of minced meat. The energy weapon of the Blue Moon people was indeed powerful. Some people screamed downstairs. Some people ran out of the door. The scene was chaotic. Charlotte walked towards Song-ji. Song-ji wanted to retreat, but his legs were as heavy as lead. He could not move a single step. Charlotte grabbed the military knife in Song-ji's right wrist and slowly pulled it out. Ah! Song-ji screamed. It was painful when the knife was stabbed in. Now, it was even more painful when it was pulled out. Charlotte pulled out the military knife. The process was very slow. When it was pulled out, he suddenly stabbed it into Song-ji's lower abdomen. This is for the villagers. Don't kill me, Song-ji wailed. Charlotte slowly pulled out the military knife and stabbed it into Song-ji's lower abdomen. This is for the girl's mother. Song-ji wanted to say something, but when he opened his mouth, blood flowed out. This one is for the 8 girls. This is for knife after knife. When Charlotte stopped, Song-ji fell to the ground. His body was full of wounds caused by the military knife. None of the wounds were fatal, but they added up to be fatal. Have you had enough fun? Lan Ji-er's voice came from behind. If you have, then let me out. We have to leave this place. Charlotte's gaze penetrated the stone floor. We can't leave. Chapter 1375. Lan Ji suddenly lay on the ground and put her ear to the ground. She kneeled on the ground with her hands and raised her buttocks high. At that moment, a mysterious landscape of blue and black stripes suddenly entered Charlotte's sight. He was stunned. He temporarily lost his memory about the situation downstairs. She looked like what a human woman looked like. There was no difference. It was just that she had a little more mysterious stripe. The more novel and mysterious it was, the more stimulating and tempting it was to men. Although Charlotte had tried very hard to restrain himself, he still couldn't resist the impulse caused by the sudden, strong stimulation. So he had an instinctive reaction. Fortunately, Lan Ji put her ear to her ear and listened for a few seconds. She looked at Charlotte and found that Charlotte was staring at the place where she had just raised her buttocks. She suddenly realized something and frowned. Pervert! Charlotte came back to his senses. He coughed awkwardly. I didn't do anything. I didn't see anything. What are you still doing? Hurry up and open this damn cage. Also, I need clothes. Those guys have already surrounded this place. I don't want those dirty guys to see me like this. Lonji Er's tone was filled with anger and embarrassment. She was not polite at all. Charlotte smiled bitterly. He found a key from Songji's body and opened the metal cage. Lonji couldn't wait to come out of the metal cage. She covered her chest with one hand and covered the area between her legs with the other. She didn't dare to take big steps and looked a little funny. When she walked in front of Charlotte, she stopped. She pointed to a wardrobe in the room and said, "Why are you still standing? Hurry up and give me a piece of clothes from that wardrobe." "I'm not your slave," Charlotte said. "You." Lonji glared at Charlotte fiercely. Then she walked past him and went to the wardrobe. When she walked past Charlotte, she put both her hands behind her back and covered her blue and black striped buttocks. Then she skipped toward the wardrobe. She asked Charlotte to get her clothes not because she wanted to order Charlotte, but because she didn't want Charlotte to see her buttocks again. Do the Ahimis have such a strong sense of shame? Saleh was a little curious. In his imagination, the society of the Ahimis should be a primitive tribal society, and on Earth, it was not a problem for those primitive tribal people to walk around with their buttocks naked. There was a sound at the top of the stairs. It was the sound of footsteps that had been slowed down. There was a sound at the top of the stairs. It was the sound of footsteps that had been slowed down. Although the people in the stairwell moved carefully, they did not expect that from the moment they entered the stone building, their every move was under Saleh's control. The guests downstairs had long since fled, and the 8 girls were nowhere to be found. Dozens of armed men had barged into the exhibition hall downstairs. Most of them were armed with human firearms, such as assault rifles, shotguns, and pistols. 2 of them were armed with the energy weapons of the Blue Moon people, and they were also wearing the light armor of the Blue Moon people. Just from the weapons and equipment of these people, it was not difficult to see that this was an elite armed force, but it was unknown which side they belonged to. Blackbeard and Hornycat did not appear in the exhibition hall downstairs. This made Charlotte a little uncertain as to who these armed men were. However, what was certain was that this stone building was not far from the distribution of the resistance army, but they still came here to carry out their mission without any scruples. This meant that the person who sent them here did not take the resistance army seriously at all. Could it be someone sent by the Black Market Alliance? Just when the other party thought that they were infallible, Charlotte thought of the existence of a third party other than Blackbeard and Hornycat. In the stairwell, the 8 armed men stopped, and their muzzles were aimed at the exit of the room on the 2nd floor. An armed man wearing light armor and holding a Blue Moon People's energy pistol carefully walked up the stairs and stopped at the corner between the 1st and 2nd floor. He looked at the stairway leading to the 2nd floor and waved his hand. "Assault!" His voice was soft, but it carried an irresistible majesty. He and another armed man wearing light armor were obviously the leaders of the team. Of the 2 leaders, one was leading the assault, and the other was responsible for sealing the entire stone building. The plan was very thorough. However, the person they were dealing with was Charlotte. If they were dealing with Charlotte above ground, perhaps Charlotte would have already escaped. Unfortunately, they were underground, and the Blue Moon's imprisonment did not exist. If Isadabu and Kaja Ruiz represented the strongest of the Blue Moon people, then he represented the strongest of the humans. After receiving the leader's order to assault, the 8 armed men in the stairwell rushed toward the exit of the stairwell. At that moment, a hand suddenly reached out from behind the corner of the wall. It was just a little, but it was holding an energy pistol. Boom! The unique sound of the energy pistol exploded in the stairwell, and the 4 armed men who were the furthest 1 kilometer away were instantly blasted into pieces by the energy shockwave. Although the 4 behind them were not dead yet, they had lost the ability to fight, and they would not live for long. The only one who survived was the leader of the Blue Moon people, who was wearing light armor. He was also caught in the shockwave of the energy bullets, but his armor was able to block the shockwave. He was only knocked to the ground, but he was not injured. The moment the leader fell to the ground, he raised his hand and fired at the exit of the stairwell. At the same time, Charlotte's feet stepped on the wall, and his body shot out, leaving the corner of the stairwell exit as fast as he could. Boom! The corner of the wall at the exit of the stairwell exploded, and the pieces of the wall fell down one by one. The stone fragments were like shrapnel from a cannonball, spreading out and shooting into the room. "Get down!" Charlotte roared. While he was still in the air, he opened his arms and pounced on Lan Ji-er, who had just put on her clothes and turned around, pouncing on the ground. The heavy pressure, the collision of stone and flesh, flattened the Ahemus woman's buttocks, and her breasts were also squashed by the man on top of her. They were no longer firm, but they were still full. Kaboom! After being hit by 2 energy bullets in a row, the stairwell collapsed, and the entire stone building was affected, shaking twice. The leader, who was almost buried by the stone, crawled up from the ground and shouted angrily, "Shoot up!" In an instant, gunshots rang out. The 2 leaders also raised the energy pistols in their hands. However, before they could fire a shot, a dull explosion came from the floor above. Kaboom! The entire floor fell down. Stone after stone smashed into the bodies of the armed men in the exhibition hall downstairs. Those who were close to the main entrance managed to escape, but those who were deep in the exhibition hall were smashed into meat paste by the stone. The 2 leaders, who were wearing light armor, were also buried alive by the rocks. The exhibition hall was covered in dust, and the lights had disappeared. It was pitch black. No one saw that there were 2 people hanging from the crystal chandelier on the ceiling of the room on the 2nd floor. A man and a woman. The man had one hand around the woman's waist, and the other was holding an energy pistol. The muzzle of the energy pistol was still pointed at the ground. The woman was holding the rope of the crystal chandelier with both hands, and she unwillingly clamped her legs around Charlotte's waist to increase his stability. This man was Charlotte, and the woman who was clamping him was the Ahemus woman, Lan Ji-er's voice came from the thick smoke. Didn't those idiots think about using the Blue Moon people's energy weapons to bombard the floor? Would the floor collapse? Although I don't know why they did it, I'm willing to help them, Charlotte said calmly. After a pause, he added, "Sometimes forgetting to bring intelligence can kill people. I'm not interested in whether they brought intelligence or not. What I want to know is..." Lan Ji-er's voice suddenly had a hint of anger. "How long do you plan to stay on me?" Only then did Charlotte react. He let go of the hand that was holding Lan Ji-er's waist and fell freely. One of the armed men who was still alive pushed away the stone that was pressing on his chest, but before he could push it away, Charlotte's feet landed on the stone. The unlucky man spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't catch his breath, and his eyes started to roll back. Lan Ji-er's feet also landed on the ground. Her landing posture was very natural, and there was no obvious sound. The Ahemus woman who lived in the Forest of Rest was obviously an expert in this field. Charlotte walked in the direction of the staircase. The darkness and dust could not stop his eyes from finding the target he should be looking for. The 2 leaders were near the staircase, trying their best to push away the stone that was pressing on them. Judging from the difficulty in their movements, they had all suffered serious injuries. They were still alive after being hit by so many stones. This once again proved that the light armor of the Blue Moon people was extremely protective. Charlotte had gotten a set from Huangzhang before, but he had given it to Han Yifei. Now he had a new set. He had his eyes on the light armor that one of the leaders was wearing. The leader's body was similar to his, so it should fit him better than Huangzhang's set. Just as Charlotte walked toward the 2 leaders, the 2 armed men who had luckily escaped carefully entered the exhibition hall. Their eyes were wide open as they searched for their targets that were still alive. A military knife suddenly pierced through the side of one of the armed men, and with a poochy sound, it pierced his heart. The other heard the noise and hurriedly turned around to swing his gun, but he didn't see anything. Then he suddenly felt heat on his neck, and his blood spurted out like a fountain. The 2 armed men fell to the ground almost at the same time. Lan Ji-er appeared from the darkness and stepped on the head of one of the armed men as she walked toward Charlotte. Charlotte pulled one of the leaders out of the pile of stones. The leader of the armed men said in fear, "We are from the Black Market Alliance." "You better." So they were from the Black Market Alliance. "I know." After that, Charlotte grabbed the leader's neck and twisted it. Crack! The leader's head drooped weakly. Chapter 1376. The second leader of the Black Market Alliance was dragged out from the pile of rocks by Charlotte, and the branding power energy field stole the information in his brain at that time. While stealing the information, Xiaolei's brain also came up with a conclusion based on the information he obtained. The Black Market Alliance was the Black Market Alliance that dominated this planet. On the surface, it seemed to be just a business organization, but the real situation was completely different. It was a huge organization that combined business and military. It had money and people, and its military was even stronger than the Resistance Army. No wonder Song Ji had a look of disdain when talking about the Resistance Army. Song Ji was Blackbeard's man, but at the same time, he was also a member of the Black Market Alliance. Every month, he would pay a considerable membership fee to the Black Market Alliance to protect his business in the underground city of the border wasteland. When something happened to him, the military personnel of the Black Market Alliance stationed in the underground city of the border wasteland rushed over, which led to what happened just now. In addition, the fat man and the thin and tall merchant who were killed by Charlotte were also members of the Black Market Alliance. This time, the enmity with the Black Market Alliance had been sown, and it was a big one. "Leave it to me." Lan Jier walked to Charlotte's side. The saber in her hand was still dripping blood, and her eyes were terrifyingly cold. Charlotte nodded. He understood how Lan Jier felt. She had been caught by Song Ji and humiliated, so even the people of the Black Market Alliance hated her. But it was good to let her vent, otherwise she would transfer the anger in her heart to someone else. For example, him. "Don't kill me." The leader wearing light armor suddenly became nervous. "I'm not a member of the Black Market Alliance." "Who?" The saber in Lan Jier's hand pierced through the helmet of the light armor and into the neck of the leader. Then she dragged the saber horizontally, enlarging the wound. Blood gushed out from the cut on his neck. When the saber left his neck, the leader covered his bleeding neck and fell to the ground. "He said he's not a member of the Black Market Alliance." Charlotte said. Lan Jier said coldly, "No one can deceive the Ahemus. This is an ability given to us by the Creator." This guy said that he wasn't a member of the Black Market Alliance because he was the first to report that he was killed by you. But what does that have to do with me? I just wanted to kill him. I don't need any explanation from him. Charlotte, Lan Jier pointed to the corpse on the ground and said, "I killed him. His energy gun and armor belonged to me." Charlotte shrugged and pointed at the corpse of the other leader. "Then his things are mine." Lan Jier smiled at Charlotte. "Although I hate humans, you're actually a good person." Charlotte said, "Don't talk nonsense. Quickly take off his armor. We have to get out of here as soon as possible." Suddenly, a shout came from outside the stone building. "Master, run!" Charlotte turned around. His gaze pierced through the thick dust that filled the exhibition hall and locked onto a girl. That girl was one of the 8 female slaves he had bought. She was the prettiest and most beautiful girl. That girl had escaped from the stone building when the battle had happened, but she hadn't left. Not only her, but the other 7 girls were still here. They hadn't abandoned him, their master. Under the lead of the prettiest and most beautiful girl, the other 7 girls followed her into the exhibition hall on the first floor of the stone building. Just as they entered the exhibition hall, Charlotte saw a large number of armed men running over from the street. The equipment and uniforms of those armed men were basically the same as those that had just been killed. It seemed that the reinforcements from the Black Market Alliance had arrived. This underground city wasn't big, and it had its own base station. Information could be transmitted to any corner of the city in a second. The Black Market Alliance had sent dozens of armed men to protect their members and businesses, but they didn't expect to be completely wiped out. Therefore, it was inevitable that all the armed forces in the underground city would be mobilized. The streets of the market were densely packed with armed men of the Black Market Alliance, moving quickly. There were at least 200 of them. There were also 4 other humanoid mecha. When they moved, the rumbling sounds made by their feet made people nervous. The merchants and customers in the market had already fled far away. No one dared to stay in this market, except for those 8 poor girls. Master? Master, you're here. The prettiest and most beautiful girl finally saw Charlotte. She wanted to get close to Charlotte, but she was a little afraid. She only took 2 steps towards Charlotte before stopping. She nervously said, "Master, quickly leave here." Outside, boom, boom, the footsteps of a humanoid mech approached. This made the girl even more nervous. She couldn't continue speaking, but she believed that with such a loud noise, her master already knew what had happened. Charlotte sighed. "You've already escaped. Why did you come back? I gave you money. You should take that money and leave." The prettiest girl bit her thin lips. "Our village has already been destroyed. The people in the village, my family, were all killed by that evil man Songji. Where else can I go? Master, we no longer have a home." Another girl said. Dense footsteps could be heard. The Black Market Alliance's armed men had already quickly surrounded the stone building. Charlotte said, "Lie on the ground and don't move." The 8 girls didn't hesitate and obediently lay on the ground. They still had a pitiful amount of cloth on their bodies. When they lay on the ground, the 8 big white blobs were displayed in front of their master. Some were thin, some were fat. Regardless of whether they were fat or thin, their big white blobs were all dirty. Charlotte used his fastest speed to remove the light combat armor from the leader, whose neck he had broken, and put it on. The whole process took no more than a minute. After that, he walked towards the door of the stone building. Lonji also removed the light combat armor from the other leader's body. She had not finished putting it on. When Charlotte walked towards the door, she didn't care anymore. She grabbed the energy pistol that had fallen on the ground and followed Charlotte. Charlotte turned around and said, "Didn't you hear me clearly? I said get down, including you." "You," Lonji said angrily. "I'm not your slave." Charlotte said, "If you want to die, then come out. If you want to live, then listen to me and lie down obediently." Lonji's lips moved as though she wanted to say something. However, she didn't say anything in the end. In the end, she still listened to Xia Lei's words and obediently lay down. She knew Charlotte's secret. This was the reason why she was willing to listen to Charlotte's arrangements and lie down. Charlotte walked towards the door of the stone building. His eyes were extremely cold. His eyes quietly turned black. It only took a breath's time for them to turn completely black. After that, his eyes were like black holes in the depths of the universe, devouring everything that came close to him. If killing was the only way to solve this crisis, then let's go all out. The human world was already extremely dirty. Sometimes, it needed to be purified. The moment Charlotte stepped out of the door, his body was pointed at by more than 200 guns. The fiendish armed men and the terrifying firepower of the humanoid mechs. The comparison between his strength and that of the Black Market Alliance was too horrible to look at. However, he just stood there like a tall and straight pine tree. No matter how strong the wind was, it couldn't shake him. The other party didn't open fire immediately. If they opened fire, the killing would begin. The one being slaughtered would not be their opponent, but them. An old man walked out from behind a group of armed men and stood in front of Charlotte. He was around 60 years old. He was slightly plump and had fair skin. With one glance, one could tell that he was an old man who lived a good life and was in good health. "Who are you?" The old man's voice was filled with a sense of pressure. Charlotte just looked at him and didn't say anything. Since the establishment of this underground city, in the past 100 years, no one has ever dared to declare war on our Black Market Alliance. You're the first. The old man's voice sounded. "I'll give you one last chance. Answer my question and kneel down." Just as the old man spoke, Charlotte's branding power energy field had expanded to the extreme. Within a radius of 100 meters, everyone's thoughts were in his branding power energy field. Within this limited range, he was in control of everything. He was the absolute ruler. As long as someone was within this range, all brain waves would not be able to escape the energy field's detection. This increase in range actually surprised Charlotte. When he was on Earth, his branding power energy field couldn't reach such a large range. After coming to the New World, the blue moon in the sky shackled his branding power energy. But his evolution had been subtly carried out, and it never stopped. Was this because he drank too much milk on Earth? Unable to get the correct answer, Charlotte's mind wasn't on this. While the old man was speaking, he quietly laid out the plan and at the same time stole information from the old man's brain. The old man's name was Hayakawa Shinsuke. He was a descendant of a Japanese immigrant from Earth. He was the leader of the Black Market Alliance's garrison in the barren underground city, and his title was Castellan. Just from the title of Castellan, it wasn't hard to guess the Resistance Army's awkwardness here. They were the main force that protected this underground city built by humans. But the party that controlled this city and reaped the most benefits was the Black Market Alliance. Looks like you don't want one last chance. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, you are the enemy of the Black Market Alliance. You're dead meat. Hayakawa Shinsuke raised his right arm. Whoosh! All the armed men pulled back the bolts of their guns. In the next second, more than 200 guns and cannons opened fire. Even if Charlotte was wearing the light armor of the Blue Moon people, he would be drowned in the rain of bullets. Charlotte's lips curled into a cold smile. He finally spoke. Do you want to die? That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.